Once upon a time, there was an Archmage on Earth so powerful that he surpassed all the limits of power available to an ordinary human being. Even the gods were afraid of his power, and for such a mortal sin they decided to punish him by making him insane and imprisoning him in the void of the abyss until the end of time. But even this was not enough to restrain the Archmage. After several millennia of imprisonment, he found a way to be reborn in the body of another human. Lucas was reborn in the body of Frey, the weakest student of the Magic Academy, who was bullied for his weakness by everyone, even his family. It even came to the point that he was going to commit suicide. But our Archmage got into his body and stopped him. Now, can he regain his past power and become the strongest in the Academy again in this loser's body? Will the gods fear his revenge? Let's find out. Later on, Lucas feels incredibly hungry, so he heads out to the West Road Academy student restaurant. He rushes into the restaurant and without wasting a second, he digs into his food, eating like it was his last meal on Earth. People around him couldn't help but stare and whisper and wonder about the way he is devouring his meal like a starved beast. The people wonder if he starved for a week or something, but Lucas is busy eating and doesn't care about the surroundings. He is overwhelmed by the taste of that food because it has been 4,000 years since he tasted anything. Everything just tasted so good and melted in his mouth. After that, Lucas roams around the campus and realizes that he is around 4,000 years old, and he is supposed to take fundamental magic lessons with these kids. It seems pretty much pointless to him, but he sighs and assumes that it can't be helped, not with Frey's current knowledge. It cannot possibly make up for the 4,000 years he has been dormant. Besides, as things stand, he needs to figure out the state of this world, so that's why he should take his time. Then Lucas opens the door. Seeing Lucas alive, David shouts in joy as he wins the bet of 10 meal tickets. While Jack slams his fist with frustration on the desk and mutters that this imbecile can't even kill himself properly, David taunts his friend and says that this is why he tells him to think positively. But Jack replies that it pisses him off that Frey is still alive. On the other hand, Lucas is confused by the situation and their conversation. He continued his steps in the room and David intentionally stuck his foot to block his path with a smirk. Then, David asks what's up with him, to continue the daily ritual with him. The next day, Frey goes back to his academy, even though Lucas thinks it's unnecessary for him to be studying with some kids. As he enters the hallway, he notices a group of students addressing him by name and asking that he comes to them. Lucas wonders who these students are. At first, he thinks that those are Frey's friends, but strangely, he is being called a loser by the group. Well, the reason Jack is mad is because he lost his wager. In his opinion, Frey should have been dead by now, but he looks pretty much alive. So now, out of rage, Jack is hitting Frey's head, since Frey being alive is going to make him pay David a 10-ticket meal. Lucas thinks of ignoring them at first, but it helps him realize that these aren't Frey's buddies, and that such encounters are sort of unavoidable, no matter the time period. People are bound to run into idiotic bullies somewhere. Lucas notices that Frey's body shivers out of fear. He realizes that Frey's body is reacting to the fear rather than Lucas's soul, pretty much muscle memory. Lucas feels embarrassed to be shivering in front of a fatso. Then, Jack pulls Lucas's cheeks and Lucas stares at Jack as he does this. So Jack reaches out to slap him now, but Lucas moves out of the way and Jack can't really land the blow. Everyone is pretty surprised at Frey because he moved away pretty fast. Some of them start gossiping and are quite surprised by what they see because Frey was unable to defend himself and everyone is taken aback. Suddenly, Lucas remembers that Frey only went to commit suicide because these mean bullies. Jack is pretty much embarrassed after he couldn't slap Lucas, so he gets back to his feet and grabs Lucas by the head to hit him. But Lucas swiftly takes his hand out of the pocket and punches him unconscious with a single blow. Jack falls far away on the ground, and whoever saw that couldn't believe their eyes that Frey could do that. Someone who had always been so helpless and weak could suddenly show such strength and power. A girl who was watching seemed pretty amused by Frey's defense. Being the most powerful Archmage and picking fights with snotty children makes Lucas feel sorry for Frey. He tells Frey that since Lucas is reputed to be the most powerful Archmage in history, he should think of this as an extra service. Suddenly, a voice from behind asks about what's going on. It's Professor Dio. He is informed by the students that Jack has fallen and is motionless. Professor Dio comes over and takes a close look at Jack. When he sees Jack in the situation, he gets concerned since he is not waking up and has scratches all over his face and body. Professor Dio sees mana-reinforced martial arts marks on Jack's fat stomach. The professor is surprised that not even the instructors employed by that institution would be that skilled to land such a blow. No one dares to respond as he asks about who could have done that. Later, Jack is taken to the infirmary by Professor Dio, and the class continues. Kevin, another lecturer, will be teaching in his place. He tells the students that Jack just had a minor concussion and that his life is not in danger. Then, he also advises them to concentrate on the lesson, because Jack and Professor Dio will return by night. Well, the thing about Professor Kevin is, he is a big pervert. He is known for his inappropriate behavior, and is disliked by everyone since he is constantly looking at the girls in the class for longer than needed. There were so many cute girls in the class, mainly the girl named Isabella, he says under his breath. His presence makes every girl uncomfortable. Students talked about his actions in whispers, but no one spoke up because they were afraid the professor would pick on them. Now, Kevin's eyes land on Lucas, who is sitting at the front desk. It's odd for Frey to attend his class, so he walks up to him. Lucas thinks that he always assumed Frey was simply physically weak and would be good academically, but in reality, he is a total incel. Anyways, Frey responds to Kevin and says he was a bit busy and couldn't attend his class. In reality, Frey doesn't go to Kevin's class because he constantly makes fun of him, despite being a professor. After learning that he has more important things to do than class, Kevin gets really pissed off. Since Lucas isn't scared, he says that he's going through a rebellious phase. The class bursts out laughing, and Professor Kevin is shaking with rage. Kevin has a furious look on his face. No one has ever dared to respond to him in such a manner as he used to bully students and make their life in the academy miserable. But everyone stops laughing when they see the visible anger on Kevin's face. The class gets silent, and everyone wonders what will happen to Frey, for Professor Kevin is nasty, and questioning or talking back to him often bothers students. Lucas specifically triggers the professor as he hears the girls in the back about his behavior towards them. Then, Kevin goes on to tell Frey about the quiz he's about to give him, and if he's unable to answer any of them, he'll have to accept full responsibility and face proper punishment for missing his lesson. Lucas is ready and Kevin asks him the first question, what Godfist Kasajin wore for specific equipment. As Lucas hears Kasajin's name, he gets shocked, as if he knew Kasajin personally. He begins to stutter out his name, and that gives Kevin the wrong idea that Frey probably doesn't know the answer to it. Kasajin, a guy as large as the Hulk, was a master at the use of mana to increase his power. He was so powerful that his mana could even burst through mountains. So, sometime back, as Kasajin is training, he hears a voice call out for him from behind. It's Lucas, Kasajin's friend, and he's advising Kasajin to take it slowly, because his muscles will break down at that rate. He would even destroy all of the mountains, and if he continues to destroy them, the wild animals won't have any place to live. Kasajin and Lucas greet each other, but Kasajin continues to drill. Lucas waits on the outer edge of Kasajin's home, asking him to stop training when his friend after such quite a while comes to meet him. Kasajin stops briefly, then turns to Lucas, telling him that he made tea for him, which will keep him occupied. Lucas sighs as he pours tea into a cup and drinks it, wondering what he expected from a musclehead and how he will undoubtedly die a bachelor. Well, Kasajin gets angry as he hears the bachelor thing, so he walks towards Lucas and says that romance is a harmful idea that disrupts one's rationality. Lucas asks him to stop giving his old lectures, but Kasajin says to him that a martial artist must look at women as if they were staring at hard rock. Then, Kasajin ignores him and returns to his workout. Returning to the present day, Lucas is thinking about the memories from his past existence and can't stop laughing. Lucas realizes he's in class and the lecturer is asking him questions, but he couldn't help but laugh, and it seems unreal that his dumb friend, a musclehead, is now a legend to people after 4,000 years. Meanwhile, Kevin is smiling in a wicked way, ready to punish Lucas because he thinks Lucas doesn't know who Kasajin is, and the students mumble that he's had him good because they weren't educating students about all of those textbooks. Isabel, who is sitting at the last desk, thinks it's unfair because the question he asked is completely irrelevant to the class. She steps up and excuses Professor Kevin and says that the topic he placed had little or no relevance to their current class, History of Magical Studies. Everyone in the class starts whispering and gossiping as they wonder how she could have dared to speak up against Professor Kevin. Even Lucas turns to look at her, shook by her audacity. Further, she goes on to say that Kasajin was a martial artist who only used mana to strengthen his physical training. So how could they label him a mage? After hearing it, Kevin glares and walks towards Isabel while he mumbles the same words Isabel had spoken. Kevin says that Isabel is attempting to degrade all who follow the path of magical arts, to which Isabel says that she doesn't feel it relevant, and it's her only point. Lucas smiles as he remembers Kasajin referring to himself as a martial artist and threatening to kill anyone who uses the word magic to describe him. On the other side, Kevin begins acting inappropriately with Isabel. He grabs her arms from both sides and tells her that the argument is interesting and that he would prefer to have it in his laboratory. Isabel pushes Kevin because she feels uncomfortable. Kevin gets angrier as he labels her an ill-mannered student and asks about the 3 famous pieces of equipment used by the Godfist Kasajin. Before she can react, Frey from the first desk smiles and says Gauntlets of the Fire Lord, Sack of Giants, and Vortex Amulet. Further, he also states that Kasajin never wore anything else and that was all he had on him. The students look at him with surprise. Lucas murmurs to himself that he had always asked him to follow trends and fashion, but he never did. especially with an outdated relic around his neck. All of the students look at Lucas with wide eyes since he is so confident. Professor tells him that it is correct. Well, Lucas did know his foolish friend quite well, and Isabel looks impressed, while Kevin's smile fades out of anger. Students whisper among themselves and are curious how Lucas knows so much. Professor Kevin's focus then returns to Isabel, and the room freezes, and he grabs her wrist, telling her to teach her some manners and to follow him to his laboratory. Isabella's discomfort is clear, and before she can do or reply, a voice comes from the front, and it's Lucas again. He quotes what Kasajin used to say something all the time. It was that interest in the opposite gender is a needless thought that shakes one's rationality, and a proper martial artist must be able to see a woman as one would see a rock, and those who are obsessed with desire forget their duty and are unable to stand on their own 2 feet, as if they are naught but less than a beast. Kevin looks at him with doubtful eyes, to which Lucas says that Kasajin was mistaken because Kevin was standing on his own 2 feet. Everyone's jaws are on the floor, and students look at Free, unable to believe what they're hearing. Kevin is quite literally shivering with rage, and his face turns an alarming shade of red as he aggressively questions Lucas if he is insane since, according to him, he only got lucky by answering a single question, and he'd see how long his arrogant attitude lasted. He approaches him and says that if he answered even one question incorrectly, he would be punished as a student at that academy. Lucas leans back in his chair and smiles as he triggers Kevin. The shock, it's apparent, not just on Professor Kevin's face, but Isabel and all the students, including his archenemy David, see Lucas with their eyes widened as he answers all the questions. Professor Kevin is staggered, and he is not believing what he is witnessing as Lucas even answered about the era of light, which even the lecturers there wouldn't know about. Everyone is wondering, is this even the same Free Blake who was called the dunce of that academy? Then, the bell rings, and it is lunchtime. Lucas smiles at the professor and taps on the desk saying that Kevin won't be having any more questions, and it was fun for him to be a part of that quiz, but he is pretty hungry now. Quite literally, the professor can't believe what happened and wonders how he knows so much about the historical events that took place 4,000 years ago in such detail. After that, Lucas rushes out of the class as if he was waiting for lunchtime. Meanwhile, Isabel is observing the whole scenario and is impressed by Lucas. A while later, Lucas is going to get food as it is lunchtime when a voice breaks in. It is Isabel who stops him and asks if he is going to the cafeteria. Our guy looks at her but continues walking again after ignoring her like he didn't even hear her. Seeing that, Isabel is shocked, wondering how he can ignore her. Being a stubborn person, she follows him. Getting annoyed by her, Lucas turns back and yells what her problem is and why she has been following him, to which she replies that she is merely en route to procure some sustenance, just like him. Just like us, Lucas finds her way of talking super weird, but she says that that's just how she was raised. In the cafeteria, Lucas orders a bulk of food. Isabel is sitting at the same table in front of Lucas and seeing all that food. She gasps. So, she asks him if he is going to eat all that food on his own. Lucas mumbles that he is going to eat just as much as he has starved for 4,000 years. Hearing that, Isabel is sort of startled and asks him what he meant by that, but Lucas asks her to forget. He diverts the topic to her and asks why she is following him in the first place. Isabel excuses herself and says that she hopes he doesn't misunderstand, but she couldn't find anywhere else to sit. But Isabel goes straight to the topic and continues by asking how he knows so much about the era of light. Lucas doesn't know what she meant by the era of light, so Isabel explains to him about the time, 4,000 years ago, when the 4 great heroes used to walk amongst them. Further, she continues that they all call it the era of light, because that was when the power of magic was said to have reached the strongest peak and outshined the eras after that. As he is eating, Lucas thinks that he can only sigh after all. Isabel is still talking, saying that it's been 4,000 years, yet magical research hasn't advanced yet, and it has pretty much regressed instead. At first, he gets pissed if there hasn't been any advancements, but, being suspicious, Lucas wonders that maybe it is the doing of demigod. Then, Isabel names all 4 legends that shaped the history of magical research. Godfist Kasajin, Great Sage Shizer Strau, Witch of Darkness, Iris Peacefounder, and continues saying the most powerful archmage known throughout history, Lucas Troman, whom she admires the most. Something she's about to say is what Lucas wasn't seeing coming. Isabel says that he was the most remarkable even amongst the all legends, and if he was alive today she would have proposed to him. After hearing this, Lucas chokes on his food and starts coughing while he nervously laughs. Seeing him laugh, Isabel gets confused. Lucas laughs, saying that a young brat like her wants to propose to who? He says in an even tone that he is flattered she wants to propose to him, but he is not interested in little girls. Feeling embarrassed, Isabel says it is rude of him to say something like that, as she never mentioned proposing to him. People around them were chattering and noticing how Isabel was having lunch with Frey, and some of them even saw her chasing after Frey. All of them are shocked because she is either ranked number 1 or 2 among all the students in that academy. Everyone wonders why she is choosing Frey when she even rejected David. Then, David passes by those students giving them a dead look, and when he sees Isabel and Frey having lunch together, he gets jealous. Isabel is still asking questions, but he doesn't care that much as he is enjoying his food. Then, she asks him about the professor's last question, which was about Scheiser's 3 training methods, and his answer was assimilation, training, and battling. Further, she continues that as she understands there are only 2 methods, battling and assimilation. Lucas doesn't answer her as he is busy eating. So Isabel taps her hand on the table and asks him if he can tell her how to become stronger by using battling methods. Lucas asks her what tier she is right now. She tells him that she is in the beginning phases of tier 3. Not being interested, Lucas tells her that it is not bad for someone of such a young age. Isabel feels strange and thinks that she noticed quite a bit today. But Lucas speaks as though he is significantly older. Lucas licks his plate and sarcasmically tells her that he is practically a walking fossil. She asks him about his age and tells him that we are of the same age, but Lucas says no. While hearing all the questions, Lucas takes all his plates and walks off from there, but Isabel asks him to wait, that he hasn't answered her question, which is what kind of training is the battling method. Lucas advises her to stick to reading because the knowledge he has come from is experience, which is why it might seem unorthodox. Isabel's eyes widen, wondering how he experienced all of it and who he really is. Later, all of the students are outside for live combat training. The professor proceeds to tell the students that to make this training fair, they will only allow students to use Tier 1 magic. Isabel and Lucas are sitting together and she keeps asking him about more battling methods. Meanwhile, David can't help and be jealous of them as he looks at them sitting together. He wonders why Isabel is so fixated on that loser, who just beat up his friend. Then, the professor announces that aside from the magic restriction, the combat will be no different from a real combat situation. And even if any one of them is injured during that match, no one will intervene. So, she hopes all the students will take that training as seriously as their lives. Well, our boy Lucas looks at the professor, named Jane, and he's head over heels for her beauty. As Isabel sees that, she not only feels embarrassed, but kind of shocked at the same time and asks him if he is out of his mind as the professor is over 40 years old and how he can be interested in her. Lucas tells her that Jane is cute and Isabel should learn from her as that is what he calls the perfect beauty of a mature woman with his eyes fixed on her. Feeling weirded out, Isabel says that he has preferences for an old man. After that, the professor tells them to begin the match and asks David to go against Fry. They both come face to face, David's face full of rage, and he asks Lucas how he is. He thought he'd die of boredom waiting for that match, and he didn't even get any sleep last night as he was so excited for this fight. They both were walking to each other, or what David thought. But Lucas went to the professor, held her in his arms and gently lowered her down. Everyone is in disbelief, but Lucas doesn't seem to care, and tells her that he finally understands the true reason for his awakening from eternal slumber the moment he laid his eyes upon her. He is certain that he was awakened by her alluring beauty. Further, Lucas tries to convince her that he may appear young, but his heart and mind are older than her, and asks her if she will go out to dinner with him at night. Man of culture. The professor blushes and rushes out of his arms and tells him to focus on the duel right now as she won't warn him again. He asks her what if he emerges victorious. She'll allow him to treat her to dinner. All the students think he is crazy. They all look with their jaws on the floor and eyes widened. David taunts him, saying that he thinks he has a chance to win even though he is a Tier 1 mage and David is a Tier 3 mage. On the other hand, Professor Jane huffs and tells him she'll treat him to dinner that night instead if he emerges victorious. Lucas tells her it's a promise, and the professor is embarrassed and shy at the same time. Lucas sure did get her weak in the knees, and she mumbles to herself that she shouldn't attract herself to a student as it is not appropriate. Then, Lucas goes back in front of David facing him. David asks him if he is crazy or if he was just buttering Professor Jane so she stops the fight. Lucas stretches his hands and with questioning expressions asks him why he would even do that. Being overconfident, David asks him if he slept well because how is he not able to grasp the current situation? He threatens him that he will smash his vocal cords and break his limbs one by one, and he will make his situation so worse that he won't be able to forfeit, nor will he be able to scream, and that day will be the last he'll be walking on his own 2 legs. Lucas tells him that there's no such Tier 1 magic that allows him to inflict such injuries, but David arrogantly says that he is David, and he can do anything. Professor Jane gives the head start and everyone starts hooting, but the moment the combat starts, David uses the Stone Rage spell. The shock in the crowd is apparent, and they wonder how he is even using that. Being concerned, Isabel asks Professor Jane how he is using such spells as it is against the rules, and the combat was only limited to Tier 1. Meanwhile, David tells everyone proudly that it is the spell developed by heirs of his bloodline, and it is a powerful spell, but depending on the situation, it can be used as a tier 1 magic. Lucas grins and asks him, yet he is using such craft to abuse someone. David smirks, thinking Lucas is scared, and because of his spell, all the rocks around him are in the air, but Lucas casually creates a magic missile. It is an admirable move, and the pretty color of the missile and the students curiously give each other glances, wondering what that is. David laughs and questions him, asking if this is the only spell he can muster against his magic stone rage, and makes fun of him. But with a flick of Lucas's finger, the missile goes straight to the rocks in the air, and with a strike, David collapses on the ground, and his body trembling heavily. Everyone looks at the scenario with their mouth and eyes widened. Not only are they impressed and shocked, they are unable to understand how Frey has changed all of a sudden. David is on the ground shocked, shaking and trembling in pain as he tries to speak. His vocal cords don't allow him to speak. On the other hand, two guys nearby on the campus wonder where all the voices are coming from. One of them tells the other that Section C is having their magical duels that afternoon. Back at the duel, Lucas advises David to be ashamed of using his bloodline's magic in such a dishonorable manner. And that's no better than spitting on his family honor. David whimpers in pain, trying to respond, but Lucas doesn't care and taunts him for what he said earlier about destroying his vocal cords. While taunting, he again conjures a magic missile and mocks him, saying about breaking his limbs one by one. In a very weak voice, David begs him to stop and apologizes to him. But Lucas ignores him and flicks his finger, and the missile is shot straight to David's limbs. David screams in pain, and Lucas scoffs, asking him why is he screaming now when he was going to do the same with Frey, and if he is not enjoying it now. Isabel is surprised, and she knows it is going too far now. She asks Professor Jane to stop them, as this fight already has a clear victor, but the professor says that the opponent hasn't surrendered yet. Isabel tells her that his vocal cords are damaged, but the professor gives a side-eye and asks her to stop talking, as she announces at the start that while maybe a simulated match, everyone should think of it as a real combat, and the path of a mangas is filled with danger that must be confronted head-on, and it's not for the faint of heart, nor can one expect salvation at their beck. Meanwhile, Lucas tortures David, saying that he seemed to enjoy it when he was the aggressor, yet it looks like he is not enjoying it as much now when the tables have turned, and it is because someone like him calls himself a mage, that the world has turned to shit like that. He thinks that David would be better off without being able to use magic at all, and it will be best for society. He goes near David and taunts him, saying that he thinks he is going to destroy all his limbs, but he is just kidding and he won't, because he is a good-hearted person, and that he'll only destroy his legs. Lucas begins to walk off, and then remembers he only destroyed one of his legs, and with a flick of his fingers, Lucas sent another missile flying toward David's other leg. The sound of the second break was followed by another scream, and Lucas chuckled coldly. After the combat, the whole campus talks about the duel, and how the one who used to be a loser like Frey destroyed David. On the other hand, David was sent back to his estate after his legs were broken and his throat smashed. Some of them say that he reaped what he sowed. Some of them were happy that the campus will be at peace. When Lucas walks in the corridor, everyone looks at him and starts talking, as he is the main character of the campus, and wonders if he has made a contract with a devil. He ignored the murmurs. His expressions were blank until a guy stopped him, asking him if he is Frey Blake, and introduced himself as a student of the 4th year, named Dauman Milrost. He invites Lucas to join the Troman Rings. Lucas repeats his words, but the guy tells him that he must have heard of them, as he is a part of this academy, and further continues saying that they are the student body that represents West Road Academy. That is what Troman Rings is. He says that it's not a gathering that welcomes anyone that wishes to join them, but only the ones whom they've deemed worthy may enter. Then, he goes on to show a ring on his finger and tells him that it is the rune ring that is given to the members of Troman Rings. The symbols etched on the rings were personally done by master craftsmen, and it's made of pure gold. If he bites, it will leave a mark, and just possessing the ring means his life is all good even after he graduates from that academy. Lucas wasn't focusing on any of the things Dauman is saying, and thinks to himself, that isn't it against human rights to use someone else's without their consent, and thinks that he never left behind any heir of his era in this era, so he doesn't have a family register or estate to guard his name. Dauman keeps blabbering continuously and saying things, and continues telling him who is leading the Troman Rings, but Lucas starts walking off. Dauman assumes that he is out of his mind, as he is letting go of such an opportunity. All of a sudden a voice breaks in. It is Master Farron June, and he asks Dauman to stop convincing Lucas, as he won't change his mind. The speaker is Master Farron June, one of the Academy's most respected figures. He approaches and addresses Lucas and greets him. Dauman takes a step back, thinking about the arrogance Lucas has. Master Farron June apologizes to Lucas on the behalf of Dauman, but at the same time he expresses to Lucas that it's his wish too that he joins Troman Rings, as Lucas has reached quite a high tier even after being so young. But well, Lucas doesn't seem to care a bit and wonders what will he even get after joining that weird group, as he doesn't even need royalties. Dauman gets offended by him for insulting their group, but Farron asks him to control himself and watches Lucas as he walks away from them. Later at night, Professor Jane and Lucas are at a restaurant as Jane promised Fry for dinner if he emerged victorious. Professor Jane and Lucas seem annoyed as Isabel comes there uninvited too. Although Lucas asks her to drop the knife and stop stuffing her mouth with food and leave, Isabel doesn't seem to care and asks him to focus on Jane and ignore her presence as she is not worried about any improper conduct between a student and professor. Of course, Lucas trembles in anger, but Isabel is not leaving his side because she couldn't find anything about the third method he spoke of, and he wouldn't either teach her, so this is the last thing she can do. Jane sits there quietly and observes both of them, and asks Isabel if she is referring to the method mentioned in Kasajian's training, and she has heard it as a passing rumor in the magical research meeting, but she couldn't find any related texts, no matter how much she searched for it. As she hears that, Jane seems interested that Lucas knows about those methods, and she'll be pretty glad if he shares it with them. However, Lucas has his drink and then walks towards Jane and grabs her from behind and teases her by saying that he will answer her questions even better in private. Jane's cheeks heat, and she blushes and wonders what's wrong with her and why she is even attracted towards a student. As their faces inches closer, Isabel interrupted in between and slammed her hand on the table and told them to stop doing those shameful acts. At night, Lucas is standing on the terrace and wonders how strange it is that if demigod really has full authority over this world, then he must seem like a throne in people's eyes, and he thought that by now they would have done everything to remove the traces of his history from the world. But even after 4,000 years, they made absolutely no effort to distort their history or any related information about the legends. He questions himself if maybe there are those who carried on their will and legacy to fight against the demigod. He is thinking all of it when Isabel walks in, and Lucas flinches after seeing her all of a sudden. Then, Lucas asks Isabel about the head honcho of the academy, though Isabel thinks of it as a foolish question. She refuses to answer his question since he wasn't giving her an answer. So, Lucas tells her if she answers his questions, he will tell her everything she wants to know. Isabel gets happy like a baby and tells him that out of the students, the most powerful mage would be Farron June, and among the professors, it has to be either Professor Dio or Professor Adelia. But the strongest out of the academy would be her own aunt, Lady Cirrus Tresnine, the chairman of West Road Academy. She is a Tier 6 mage who is renowned within the Empire as the Frost Queen. Professor Jane interrupts and joins their conversation and tells them people say that the limits of a mage are theoretically achievable up to Tier 9, but the last person who is rumored to have reached Tier 9 existed almost 3,000 years ago, but they have no way to prove whether those rumors are true or not. As such, they believe the highest a mage can achieve is Tier 8. Even then, there have only been 10 Archmages who have reached Tier 8 in the whole world. Lucas, while hearing all of it, looks around the campus, notices the barriers around the campus, and asks who elaborated those barriers. Nobody knew who elaborated those barriers, but someone from Tier 6 couldn't do it, and Lucas suspects something very suspicious is going on. He wonders that Isabel's aunt must know it, so he'll meet her soon. He mumbles and aims to reach Tier 7 first, though Jane finds it unreal and tells him that sometimes baseless bluffs turn into reality. Lucas grins, steps closer to Jane and starts teasing her, but Isabel interrupts again. Isabel threatens that she will report Lucas to her aunt, which makes Lucas annoyed and say that he hates snot-nosed brats, which makes Isabel angry. Jane sort of agrees with Lucas, but Isabel yells at her too. After a while, Lucas is standing there at the terrace, while he thinks about how it could be sabotaging for him to be hasty. After all, he got this opportunity after 4,000 years. Standing alone, he thinks to take things slow because that way will be the fastest for him while he stares at the moon. Even with a broken leg, David decides to come back full of rage, and everyone looks back at him as he's not only yelling, his broken leg has gathered quite a bit of attention. He screams Frey's name and wonders where he is. With the support of walking sticks, he walks while he yells that there is no way that a loser like him could beat David up. Everyone in the academy is worried as to what's going to happen next. Meanwhile, Lucas reads a book when he hears David yelling and saying that he is going to make him regret what he did and why he was born. David continues to yell that he will gather up all his friends to remind him who he is, but before he could even complete his sentence, Frey shoots a magic missile at him. David goes flying back to the ground, and now he doesn't just have a broken leg, but also a broken nose. Once again, he is sent back to his home to make a full recovery. Professor Kevin tells the students about the news, and everyone starts chattering about David's broken nose. Later on, Lucas is going around the campus and wondering how boring everything is. He wasn't really expecting anything major from kids, but he was sort of hoping that they would put up some challenge because after all, this is the West Road Academy, which is supposed to be the most prestigious magic academy. While still in his thoughts, he realizes that he still needs combat experience if he wants to get better at adjusting the level of mana output he can manage with Frey's body. As Lucas is walking in the hallway, a voice stops him calling him a scum. Lucas turns back and sees who that is. It is some blonde guy who is here to defend David. He says arrogantly that he has heard Frey is pretty decent at magic. As he sees Frey looking at him blankly, he introduces himself as Alex, and with every sentence he says, he blurts out a swear word. Apparently he is the senior of all seniors. He's still not done with this big talk and says that wimps like him fall all over him and die the moment he looks down on them. Then, Alex screams about what he did to David, who is supposed to be his cute underclassman. Meanwhile, Lucas can't really tell if he is trying to pick a fight or just run his mouth like that, so he breaks the ice and says if they all are here to harass him. As Alex hears that, he raises his hand to teach him some manners, while he asks if he is looking down on them. Once again, Alex begins to run his mouth and says that he is the guy who participated in the magical martial arts tournament and came 16th place. Lucas could not help but yawn at that commentary and says that this was a grand introduction for an ordinary school bully who decided to gang up on a single student. Alex wants him to shut up, but before he could blabber anything else, Lucas shoots him with his magic missile and he goes flying back. Quite literally, nobody could believe that a loser like Frey could knock out Alex. The other bullies begin to yell that he could have just waited for him to finish speaking and then attack him. Lucas does not have time for that, and excuses himself that he can't get mixed up in this dumb squabble. But the bullies are not going to let him go, and one by one they introduce themselves to him, and now Lucas is getting pissed off, and with a single shot, he takes all of them out. Then, he sighs and just murmurs to himself that at this rate he will turn into a boring bully as well. Later on, he is sitting in a class and getting pretty bored. But Isabel shows up and tells him that there is a rumor going around about the infamous student who has been crushing all delinquents with the magic missile. Lucas seems still pretty much bored, that he hasn't had any opportunities worthy of using his magic, which is stronger than a magic missile. Meanwhile, Isabel just stares at him while he's keeping his head on the table. She can't help but think how dreamy he looks. Then Lucas asks her what she is doing here and she flinches and her notebook falls down. After that, she tells him that she tried to heed his advice regarding the alchemical concoction. He looks at her and she further says that she knew that Troll's blood was ideal for mixing the formula, but the ratio of 7.3 with the magical crystal he mentioned produced very unexpected success. With still his head on the table, he tells that she will probably get much better if she uses the blood of a half-troll instead, as the blood of a half-troll has just the right amount of corrupt substance mixed in their blood. Isabel, once again, is surprised and wonders what he will teach her this time. And with a fed-up look in his eyes, he wonders when did he take on an apprentice. But then he thinks that this kid has good potential, and if he tutors her well, she might reach tier 7 or tier 8. So, Lucas tells Isabel that he will teach her that training method after all, and she gets super happy. He informs her that they will spend the holidays going on a journey for training purposes, and if she agrees to come with him, he will show her what it means to learn from the battling method. Further, Lucas continues that this venture may be risky, and there is a good chance that she might not return alive, so if she is not set on it, he will suggest she give up quickly. But before he could even complete his statement, she agrees to come with him. Lucas sweats at her hasty behavior, but Isabel is quite literally excited to continue and venture with him on a journey. Isabel shows up with the huge luggage with herself. Lucas, of course, gets shocked seeing her large backpack and couldn't help but ask about the luggage, if she is going for camping. Isabel shouts and tells him that women need many things to prepare for these types of journeys, and changes the topic to ask him where they are traveling to. Lucas tells her that he is thinking of visiting Mamta, España. It surprises Isabel, and she tells him that España is known to be the heaven of the most dangerous monsters. That makes Lucas curious and asks her if she knows any way. Isabel puts her luggage down and takes out her map and shows him that even if they take a warp gate from Española, according to her, it should take them half a day to reach España. She heard the rumors that the mountain is home to many of the dangerous monsters there are, so Lucas playfully asks her if she is scared. Isabel tells him not to look down on her. She glances at him, and adds that she never once doubted that the adventurer wouldn't have its own share of hardships. Soon enough, they continue towards their trip. Later, Lucas asks Isabel about the warp gate she mentioned. She tells him that it's a magical ritual that allows long-distance teleportation. Surprisingly, Lucas exclaims about how convenient it is, and it just slips his mouth that they never had that 4,000 years ago. Isabel gets startled. Then, Lucas realizes that magical levels are lower amongst the modern-day generation as they lack knowledge of magical arts, but they've developed convenient magical tools. But the warp gate is truly a fascinating one. Then, Lucas covers his words and says that it's a warp gate that he finds convenient. Isabel tells him that it's just a bit expensive, so he asks about the cost. So Isabel explains that it's quite a distance between Chaos Symphonia to Española, so it might be around 10 gold. Lucas gets anxious because his whole saving amount was 1 gold. He realizes that Isabel is also noble, so couldn't help but ask her about how much money she got on her at the moment, but she tells him that she hasn't brought any money. Isabel was taught that living a life of luxury will make one become accustomed to being lazy. This is to be their journey for training purposes. Of course, she wouldn't have brought money with her. Lucas shouts and tells her to go home and bring some money. She refuses and asks him to make sure that isn't their first trial involving creating funds for their adventure. Shouting again, Lucas says that it's odd coming from someone who packed luxury camping gear behind her. This time Isabel shouts back and says that it's different. A woman must prepare many things for such journeys. At this point, Lucas gets frustrated, so Isabel reassures him saying that they will find a means of traveling once they reach the capital. Then, out of nowhere, she asks him if he has worked part-time at all. Frey replies that he never worked before in his life. Once they reach, they see a huge ship. Lucas asks how they will ride it for free. Isabel tells him that it's free for West Road Academy students only. Then, Lucas figured out the reason for so many students there. He starts to assume that they will serve amazing dishes on board, and wonders if they will have a meat menu. Isabel says that she heard they serve only the most extravagant cuisine made with the best ingredients. Hearing that, Lucas is already feeling hungry. Later, a purser informs them they are full and will be back in 4 days. Lucas gets freaked out and falls on the ground by disappointment. Purser advises them if they are in a hurry, he suggests them to board the Cortez instead. It isn't that bad, but comparing side by side, they don't feel thrilled. On the other hand, a group of pirates are planning a hunt on the Cortez. The captain is guiding the plan to the whole group that their target is the vessel passing through the straits next to Geotanbul. They will wait for them to pass by the Oscal Islands and strike them once they are within range of their ships. Back at the port, Cortez's captain, Mac Martinez, welcomes Frey and Isabel. He tells them that they'd be stranded for 4 whole days at the docks. Isabel asks him why there are so few passengers, as this seems like an excellent vessel. Captain replies that this ship passes through the Oscal Islands, but those islands are said to be frequent hunting grounds for pirates as of late. Isabel gets scared and asks if she really heard the word pirates. The captain reassures her by telling her that this vessel is being escorted by 2 warships, and each of those ships has a Tier 4 mage serving as our bodyguards for this voyage. They are seasoned veteran battle mages from the Magic Association. 2 of them should be enough to deal with any pirate threats in these waters. Captain adds that if they value their lives, they wouldn't dare attack a vessel protected by the Empire. Just then, pirates attack their ships. They freaked out and their eyes were wide with terror. Pirates sank both of their warships in an instant, and it just ended up with no help to them. But everyone gets scared to death and shocked, as no pirates should be capable of sinking their warships so easily, but still, they have sunk them both. Some time ago, all the pirates planned to attack the ship, but as they saw the Cortez with their telescope, they got confused after seeing 2 warships with them. The captain asks them to take their places and pipe down. However, their esteemed guest will take care of the nuisance. When the guest comes out, he looks so animalistic, his face dangerous like a demon. Everyone bows in respect while he is casting his dangerous spell. The captain introduces to the pirates that the guest is Master Dulad, the Lich, and he'll be helping them secure profits on the ship. The pirate with the captain is not happy with the captain's decision, as he had only read about him in the tales, but seeing him this close frightens him. He wasn't even in agreement of going after the Cortez, but to think of him making a contract with the Lich was the last thing he was expecting from the captain. He tells the captain that he will go down in the history of all pirates as the entrepreneur of the pirating era, but the captain scoffs and doesn't seem concerned a bit. While arguing, they hear a roar, and it was Master Dulad casting the ice spear spell, which should break the vessel. The people on the ship get scared, though the seasoned veteran battle mages from the Magic Association defend the ship. Not knowing any details, the captain cheers everyone, saying they will be getting rich soon. The spell Master Dulad casts to summon ice spears doesn't seem to work though. Captain comes to Master Dulad and taunts him, saying that he really thought of destroying both vessels with one spell. Master wonders in suspicion as he cast a spell that should have summoned 3 ice spears. Still, the vessel escaped sort of unharmed. Captain hesitantly reminds the master of the agreement of not destroying the ship as they need to use the kids on the boat to make a big profit. Master Dulad looks at the captain furiously with his dangerous and creepy face, and tells him that it would be troublesome if they managed to turn back and escape the way they came. So that is why he summoned the last spear to block their escape, and it was never meant to destroy the vessel. The captain asks in worry what he means. Master Dulad smirks with his scary face and informs him that there is something interesting on the ship. Everyone on the ship is freaking out and running around. The crew is trying their best to calm them down, but everyone is panicked, scared, and not ready to listen to anything or anyone. Isabel is alarmed too, as she saw the warship being sunk, but Lucas assures her that they are just pirates, and she shouldn't be scared. But Lucas says that something bothers him. and it is that there were 3 ice spears summoned, but one of them has vanished without a trace. Isabel asks him if it was his doing, but he tells her that it was not him. Lucas thinks within himself that he sensed that malicious mana but couldn't make a move, and his head went black for a second as he felt a presence similar to that of demigod, and thinks that he is not different from Free, as Free was weak, powerless, and couldn't defend himself. Lucas doubts that maybe he is still haunted by the trauma he has suffered from being imprisoned for 4,000 years. While thinking all of this, Lucas's body starts sweating and trembling, though he tries to calm himself down and tells himself that it is not a demigod, and it reeks of an undead's mana. Isabel gets worried too and asks Lucas if it was not his doing, then who it actually was. So, Lucas tells her that they don't know it yet, but they should definitely go and greet them as they did protect the ship after all. The pirates started attacking each other, and it was chaos as the commoners were screaming and shouting while being scared. Isabel, being scared, holds Lucas's arm, but Lucas tells her to stop being scared as they are really pirates and not some monsters. The pirates who attacked the Cortez smirked in greed as they weren't expecting so many kids and people in the ship since it is a smaller ship than the Nautilus. There were roughly around 40 rich kids on the ship, so they laughed at the thought of being able to live out the rest of their days drinking and enjoying. The captain announces, saying that the rich noble heirs of Westboard Academy are their friendly local pirates, the Bloodsail Raiders. The captain of the Cortez asks the captain of the attacking ship if he has any idea which vessel they are attacking right now. The captain of the attacking ship gives an evil smile, and all the pirates start laughing, and the captain says that he knows really well that it is a treasure ship with plenty of hostages for them to exchange for some handsome ransom. All of a sudden, a voice breaks in. It is a student who comes out with full courage and says that they don't get to do this, as the people aboard that ship are the future of magic, all destined to become powerful magic, and it is too bad for them that they picked the ship those students are in. The student starts to cast a magic spell when a pirate shoots a knife, saying that the boy needs to have a reality check as no pirate on the ship would give him time to chant a spell. The knife goes straight towards his head, but it goes behind the boat, leaving the student frightened and shaking in fear. Everyone on the ship gets scared, though Lucas notices a guy hiding his face with his zipper and thinks within himself that this is the guy who managed to alter the trajectory of the knife that would have plunged into the guy's throat, and he is the one who stopped the ice spear from sinking the ship. The guy comes in front of the student, who is trembling in fear, and advises him that they are not the enemies he can easily fight with, and he should stay silent and seek safety. The pirate with the captain questions him about why he missed the shot. The captain lies, saying that he missed it on purpose because that would be their precious booty, but it was because of the guy hiding his face who managed to alter the trajectory of the knife. The captain gets furious and thinks of setting an example for his hearties, and looks at a student with glasses and points at him to attack him. But the boy gets scared, falls down, trembles, and wets his pants. After that, the captain pinches his nose and makes fun of the boy because he peed his pants, and one of the pirates picks him up like a sack and throws him in the water. All the members of that crew make fun of him, and the boy cries for help as he is drowning in the water, but he drowns in the sea and dies. The people on the ship cry upon seeing the cruelty, and one of them says that he was a Tier 2 mage and this is pure injustice. All the students get furious and grief at the death of their fellow mate and start casting magic spells. But the captain stands at his spot calmly, not caring a bit when they shoot the magic towards them. Only the pirates get hurt. But the captain remains unharmed, and a vessel is created around the captain. This leaves everyone shook, but when the Lich appears, everyone starts trembling in fear. Isabel screams in fear, but Lucas remains still. A man from the crew shouts, saying that they have all gone mad as they made a deal with the Walking Dead, and they all are being used as the undead never make deals with the living mortals, and wonders what they were thinking before doing all this disaster. The captain seems not concerned a bit and mocks with pride, saying that they only care about money as he was greedy of money and power. People on the ship tell him that even if he is in profit, this is an insane thing to do. Isabel, after seeing the scenario, is scared and tries to hug Lucas, but he tells her to stop clinging to him, as it is very hot already. And can't she see how humid it is out there in the middle of the ocean? She hugs Lucas's arm and tells him that those pirates are not just ordinary pirates, and they are definitely in danger. Then, Master Dulad says that a Lich has to be at least an equivalent of a Tier 5 mage. Neither of the 4th tier battle mages stood a chance against it, and asks the person to step forward, the one who negated his spell, as he knows that he is between the crowd. He roars and asks him to show himself, and casts a magic spell saying if he insists on hiding, death will descend upon everyone on the ship. Getting furious, he starts destroying the ship while casting his spell faster than ever, though the captain hesitantly tells him that he didn't agree on this when the Lich looks at him with his scary red eyes. He flinches and shuts his mouth. In an instant, all the people hear footsteps of someone coming forward. The man was hiding his face with his zipper. He comes face to face with the Lich, and the Lich asks him if he is the one who negated his spell, to which the guy says yes. The Lich asks him to state his name. He slowly removes his zipper, and everyone gasps with their eyes and mouth widened, as it was no one other than Farron June. Isabel exclaims Farron June's name, and Lucas asks her if she knows him. So, Isabel says that there isn't any student at their academy who doesn't know him, because he is the student who runs TBE Troman Rings. Not just that, he has also the heir to the family, which is one of the 3 great households. Isabel adds unnecessary details like that he is always competing against her for the top grades in their academy, which makes Lucas think that she is indirectly praising herself. To clear up the confusion, she says despite the similar grades, his powers are way more capable than hers. Meanwhile, the other girls begin drooling all over him, and the students know that they are saved. Even, Isabel thinks that he will probably save them from the predicament. But, Lucas hits her with the reality that he is barely able to stand now, because the Lich, a tier 5 mage, and Farron might have some enlightenment, but still his body is not clear of impurities. Still, he managed to negate a spell that was far stronger than his abilities. Honestly, a miracle that he is standing right now. All of that makes Isabel think that maybe Lucas is more powerful than the Lich, but he doesn't seem to care about that, and tells her to get away from him since she is holding his arm. On the other hand, Farron wonders if it was a mistake to get on the ship, but he had no idea that the Lich would come back to haunt him like this. His hands are trembling as his whole body will shatter into pieces. Then, the Lich finally speak up that he did not expect to encounter a good subject like him. Farron turned to the captain of the pirates to ask about his objectives. He says that they heard the rich kids would be traveling through the dangerous Oskal Island, so he decided to give them a little visit. With an evil smirk on his face, he assures Farron they will be taking a handsome ransom out of their families now. As Lucas hears that, he sighs on the pirates' greediness. But Farron keeps a proposal in front of him that he will gladly be their hostage for ransom, but he must release the others, and his family will pay twice the amount as they ask for ransom. The captain of the pirates does not care because they have the undead master on their side and rejects Farron's proposal. Suddenly, Farron's eye glows and he decides to take the pirates down with him before the Lich kills him. Lucas is impressed by Farron and how gutsy he is. But before Farron could do anything, the Lich wants to devour his mana and tells him that he will savor every last drop of mana he has and use his crippled body to raise him as an undead like he is, and keep him as his minion. Through his magic, the Lich holds Farron tightly, and the captain of the pirates yells that there aren't going to be any negotiations. Then he orders his crew members to capture all the kids. Out of terror, everyone tries to save themselves from the pirates but ends up getting captured by them. A pirate then sees Isabel and Frey, Isabel hiding behind Frey, and the pirate begins to approach them. Isabel holds onto his arm tighter as she sees the pirate approaching. Lucas dislikes how she has been holding him because he feels hot. Meanwhile, the pirate with lustful intentions says to Isabel that the two of them can go play somewhere quieter. But the pirate hates Frey being there and tells him to go away. He insults him and calls him skinny like burnt wood. Lucas doesn't care about what the pirate keeps blabbering about his looks because sure enough, Frey isn't the ugly one here. The pirate starts getting angry now and cracks his finger to teach him a lesson. That pisses off Lucas and he insults him, calling him a one-eyes prick. The other students, including Jack, gets worried for Frey and wonder if he is out of his mind, because the scenario is exactly like pouring oil over fire. Jack screams at him to stand down, just because he is a bit stronger than before, doesn't give him the right to play a hero everywhere. Genuinely, Lucas gets surprised to see Jack being concerned. On the other hand, the pirate takes out his knife and begins to run towards him to hit him because he pissed him off. Farron, Jack, Isabel, and all the other students are scared for Frey, but Lucas, being Lucas, just lifts his hand, and it was enough to throw away the pirate and knock out quite a lot of his teeth too, leaving everyone in a shock. The pirate falls down from the ship into the water and nobody can believe what just happened. The students and the pirates all had an equal reaction. But the students knew what was up, and they just looked at Frey and tried to process that the greatest loser of the academy could pull that move. Even Farron can't believe what happened. He knows what he saw. Frey counterattacked with a high cake that was reinforced with mana, and it was so fast, with such explosive force, that even his eyes couldn't follow the movement. Farron pondered that he knew Frey wasn't an ordinary match, but he had no idea that he possessed outrageous control over his mana reinforcement. Isabel stands behind Lucas and he puts his hand on her head and tells her to observe. He advises her if she can't defeat anyone on the ship, she should at least be able to protect herself. Then, Lucas leaves Isabel behind and walks towards the pirates. The pirates are still not able to process what just happened because even they couldn't follow Lucas's fast movements. So they think that the pirate who just fell down must have missed a step because he was too focused on Isabel. But soon enough he realizes that wasn't the case, as Lucas with the speed of light comes and stands in front of the pirate, and he loses his crap. Meanwhile, the Lich has been observing it all and thinks how fast he is. Before the fat pirate could even realize what is bound to happen, Lucas hits him so hard that his bones crack and he falls on the ground. With this in his eyes, he says that they should have taken the deal when Farhan was trying to convince them. But well, it's too late now because he's not a good fellow like him. Before he starts, take them down, he tells them. Despite the hardships, he has never killed any human beings, but these pirates don't look human to him. Hearing all his big talk, the pirates are full of rage, and they all rush towards him with their knives to kill him for having that nerve, not knowing they would be calling their own deaths upon them. Lucas attacks them and has to use just some movements of his magic to take them all down one by one. But the pirates are not backing down that easily, and they decide to surround him. Well, they surely got no hope either because Lucas's mana is really powerful, and within seconds the pirates are taken down. The Lich, the captain of pirates, has been observing that all, how fast and powerful this kid is. Even the students can't believe how great of a fight Frey has been putting up. A girl was struggling to release herself from a pirate and Lucas rushes to save her and kicks off the pirate, releasing the girl. Lucas is fighting like a straight out of a movie, yet the pirates can still believe that there is only one guy who has been taking all of them down. Having some sanity, some pirates beg for mercy, but yes, it's too late now and they all get wiped off too. Suddenly, he hears a pirate who calls him a monster and threatens him that if he tries to move just a muscle, he will slit Isabel's throat open, since he has been holding her captive. Lucas turns back to look at him and knows what is going to happen next. The pirate sweats his pants and suddenly he sees Isabel casting a spell on him and her eyes begin to glow. She chuckles and looks at him, and with a lightning strike she takes him down, following Lucas's advice that she should be at least able to protect herself. Seeing such a bold move, the captain of the pirates, the Lich, Farhan, and all the other students can't believe that Isabel did that. Isabel looks at Frey after she pulls that move, as in asking for an approval from him, and then asks how that move was. Lucas smirks and approves that it wasn't a bad move for a brat like she is, looking proud of how she's been learning. After all that happened, the captain of the pirate begins to clap and assumes that he must be an elite mage from the Empire disguised as a student. Further, he says with tears in his eyes that Frey got him really good, so he put out a deal in front of him since he is no ordinary image, but still thinks that it must have been difficult for him to beat up so many of his men. Lucas wonders what the deal could be, and the captain of the pirates says that they can trade half for half, which means that he will take just half of these students for a joyride, and Frey can save half of them. Meanwhile, all the other students are crying. The captain seems pretty firm on the deal, thinking that it is a win-win situation. Finally, Lucas breaks the ice, saying that he is very disgusting but somewhat refreshing as well because Lucas has already killed so many of his men, yet he thinks it's a win-win situation. The captain shrugs and says that he will let Lucas decide and choose the students who he parts with. A blonde girl screams that he should pick her. She is basically begging to save her and assure that she will give him 100 gold pieces as a reward. Even if that's no enough, she says she would do anything he asks her. One by one, all of the students start running up to him and increase their offers to save their lives. Though Lucas seems unbothered, but he turns to Isabel and says that they should take some of these offers because they don't have enough travel funds, only to tease her. Isabel sure gets pissed off and Lucas begins to bid higher and higher as if it's an auction. The students are fighting each other and giving reasons how much their lives are worth why Frey should save them. Offers include a good government job, gold coins, and much more, and Isabel seems pretty shocked at the selfishness of these people. Finally, Lucas speaks up and tells them to give him a little rest. The blonde tries to cling on to him and he shoves her away and says that it is already hot and humid out here in the sea. This follows up with the speech and he yells that these stupid kids know nothing except how to wave around their money, and it's not even their money, it is their parents' hard work money. Further, he says that they all want to become a great mage, yet the only thing they are interested in is saving their own lives, which is a disgrace, because what else are they hoping to become after they graduate? In a calm tone, Lucas says that to become a great mage is to protect the weak, and regardless of how weak or strong they are, they need to put others first rather than their own selves. Isabel, the least to say, is mesmerized. But well, Lucas again, being Lucas, lightens the situation by saying how much they will be paying him. The captain and the Lich had been observing this all, and the captain thinks if the Lich is also scared of Frey. The Lich tells the captain to not be a fool because there is no human who is stronger than him, as if he read the captain's mind, which scares the captain a bit. Because now he got to be mindful of what he thinks too. The Lich says that he was simply observing the boy because the man emitting from him is something he has never seen before, and it is a talented magic martial artist. Still, he's just a tier 5 mage. Suddenly the Lich's clothes come right off, and he knows that Frey is still going to be unable to defeat him. Seeing the intense mana radiate out of the Lich, The captain begins to butter up the Lich and says that he knew he could have faith in him. With Lich's eyes completely red, he speaks to Lucas, saying he has killed countless practitioners like him, so he should just give up and become a part of him. Lucas sighs and says that he can't find him likable at all because he speaks just like demigod. That infuriates the Lich, and with intense power, he releases a living missile to hit him. Despite the spell being powerful, which scares all the pirates and the students, Lucas swiftly dodges it. But even after dodging the missile begins to make its way back to Lucas. Isabel screams at Lucas to be careful because that is a tracking spell weaved into the projectiles, and it will just keep following him. Well, Lucas is aware of that while Farron sweats and thinks Fry is in danger. That is because the tracking magic isn't directly controlled by the Lich, rather, it is a trajectory which is constantly altered on its own to aim for the target. Meanwhile, the Lich still can cast spells in addition to the tracking spell. The Lich throws out another spell named Bone Hand, and some hands begin to emerge from the deck of the ship, following Lucas all around. The captain is having fun at that sight, thinking that finally Fry can be taken down. And well, the hands crash on Lucas, and Isabel yells out for Frey, out of concern. Being concerned, Isabel uses her magic to find where Frey is. After a lot of struggles, she is unable to see where he is and yells out for him multiple times, and after they get no answer, they all assume that he probably died. But the missiles are still in the air, and suddenly the Lich sees that they are coming directly at him, and he tries to form a barrier around him. Since the missiles are quite powerful, they form cracks in his barrier and leave him pretty confused. Suddenly, Farron notices that his seal has been unlocked and he's free. Out of frustration, the Lich begins to throw attacks randomly and wonders what is happening, because the living missiles should be logged onto Frey. Moreover, they should have vanished the moment it stopped detecting his life energy, leaving everything beyond the Lich's comprehension. To their surprise, Lucas is standing right behind the Lich, leaving everyone's jaws on the floor. The Lich turns back to see where he is, and wonders how Frey manages to dodge all of those attacks, and is caught behind him through a blink. Lucas explains that he really likes admiring the back of his head, because when he is at the back, he really can't see the Lich's ugly face. About to lose his crap, the Lich still wonders. How was he able to do all of this on an unstable deck, because that must have required Frey to go through at least 5 different simulations and calculations, and even he is incapable of doing that, an undead being unable to reach the level of a mere mortal being. Then, Isabel asks Frey if he is okay, but as he turns back to look at her, she cannot believe what she had a vision of. She sees Lucas Troman and she begins to sweat. After that, Farron sees the Lich forming a whole lot of ice spears. It is the same spell that destroyed the warships, and all the students' eyes are filled with fear. Meanwhile, the Lich thinks that he has a bad feeling about Frey, and just in case he should destroy the whole ship with his ice spears. Though he regrets that he wasn't able to feed on the mana of Farron, but it is too late anyways. He releases the ice spears to wrath the ship, but a barrier stops all of his attacks. Seeing that, the Lich is shook by the defensive barrier that Lucas formed. On the other hand, Farron can't believe that he literally was vomiting blood after negating a single spear. Isabel is still in the same state she was in a while ago and wonders who Frey really is. The Lich, still in the sky, gets furious. That is when Farron and the others see that the Lich forms an ice spear of a size he's never seen. Humongous. Then, the Lich throws that on the ship. But Lucas jumps and defends the whole ship from the attack by cracking the ice spear into 1,000,000 pieces, leaving the Lich completely shook. Then, Farron and Isabel, with their magic, form a barrier around the ship to protect from the broken ice spears from falling on them. The Lich and Lucas are outside the barrier, and the Lich thinks that Frey shouldn't be more powerful than a tier 5 mage. It is literally impossible for a human to make a crossover with him. Lucas says something confusing to him, and the Lich realizes that Frey is way beyond tier 5. Then, Lucas sighs and says that the Lich should try harder because he was just starting to feel good, since it is not every day that he gets to use spells which are stronger than the magic missile. Of course, the Lich is now getting scared and screams who Frey really is. So, Lucas tells him, he is widely known as Frey Blake, the super loser of West Road Academy. But, then, he gives his actual introduction, that his true name is Lucas Troman, and he is the one who returned to this world after 4,000 years to teach valuable life lessons to mad fools like them. He is the history's most powerful Archmage. Isabel and Farron can see them talking, but they are so high up in the sky that they can't really hear them and wonder what they are talking about. On the other hand, the Lich screams how he dares to speak lies because Lucas has been dead for ages now. Then, Lucas gets behind him again and pierces through his heart and takes out the life vessel. The Lich can't really die until this life vessel is completely destroyed. Since the location is different for all of the undead beings, it was a little difficult for Lucas to find it. The Lich knows it is game over for him, so he tries to convince Lucas to stop, but without wasting a single moment, Lucas destroys it, and the Lich finally dies. Everyone, the students, the pirates, Isabel and Ferran, and standing completely shaken, how easily Frey took down the Lich. But the pirates know how much of a grave situation they're going to be in now. The captain of the pirates, he sweats and thinks, how did an undead die? It's his time to get cooked. Lucas stands behind the captain and sentences all of them to death. The ship is a total wreck and all the pirates have been killed, including the captain whose body looks like it's been taken a bite out of. Lucas stands alone, who defeated all of the pirates all by himself, leaving all the students shook. Quite literally, Isabel can't believe her eyes. As the dawn breaks, they all reach their destination, and Isabel and Lucas begin walking out of it. Suddenly a voice stops them. It is Ferran, who praises Lucas and says that his powers were simply extraordinary and he was really impressed. Lucas once again ignored Ferran, and Isabel gets awkward because of Lucas. Then Ferran stops him and bows in front of him that he has saved his life and he will make sure to pay back his debt. Feeling awkward, Isabel stops Ferran and says that it's unnecessary. Finally, Lucas talks to him and asks how he is feeling because his internals must be destroyed after negating a spell from the Lich. But Ferran explains that he feels better because he had the chance to spew out all his impurities along with some blood. Lucas laughs and tells him to stop bluffing. Meanwhile, Isabel says that he is being disrespectful towards him. As they are making their way inside the town, Ferran asks him what happened to him exactly, because just a few weeks ago he was a no-show and a loser of the academy, and now he literally defeated a Lich of a high caliber. Further, Ferran says that he has heard Blake's name before, and he was known as the most untalented student in the entire history of Westwood Academy. But in the last few weeks, he has come into prominence. That only means that he has been hiding all his true powers this entire time. But Lucas dodges the topic and says that all kinds of things happen in life. Ferran wants to ask him further, but he chooses not to. Then, he invites him to visit his family estate sometime to show him his gratitude for his deeds. As Isabel hears that, her jaw drops because this is literally a personal invitation. But Lucas says that he will only visit if he has time. Hearing that answer, Isabel gets mad and wonders if he is insane because there are many nobles who are trying to find the smallest thing to request a formal audience with the June household. Meanwhile, Lucas gave a very lame excuse. It clicks in his mind that he could ask Ferran for some money, around like 20 golds. Isabel can't hold it in her any longer and screams at Lucas that how can he use this opportunity to request for money out of all things? And this is not how a West Road mage should be acting. But Lucas is aware that Isabel isn't the smartest cookie, and reminds her that they are in this mess because she was too stubborn to not bring any money with her. On the other hand, poor Ferran is getting nervous, and he says he is fine with giving them the amount, but he needs to know what they intend on spending it over. Lucas was straight to the point and says he wants to get a ride from Chaos Symphonia via a warp stone. So, Ferran takes out his bag and gives them 300 gold coins and tells them to take them as a sign of his gratitude. Seeing 300 gold coins, even Lucas gets a bit embarrassed, but Ferran insists for him to take them. Later, they begin to walk in the town, and Ferran tells him that he would like to invite him over immediately, but he is in the middle of a marriage discussion with his fiancée. Lucas laughs and tells him to stop bragging, but Ferran explains that his marriage is not as pleasant as it sounds, because it was planned all by his father without his consent. Well, Lucas, being a man of culture, directly asks if his fiancée has an older sister or an auntie. Isabel shakes her head and screams that Frey should give it a rest. Then Ferran tells further that he was told that she is the daughter of the esteemed Aquadeed house, which is said to be a powerful household that has produced many famous knights. Yet, he still isn't sure that they will get along. He isn't even sure that they will like him after they learned their fiancé-to-be is a weak mage. As Isabel hears that, she says that statement is full of contradictions because he surely is far from weak. But Lucas assures him that Ferran got a handsome face to make up for everything else, not the assurance Ferran was looking for. Once again, Lucas reminds him that he needs to tell him if his fiancée got a hot older sister or an auntie. Being annoying, Isabel stops him and screams to stop his obscene thoughts going on in his head. Seeing them fight like kids, Ferran begins to laugh loudly. Isabel and Lucas look at him with a strange look, and he explains that he hadn't laughed like that in quite a long while. After reaching a bridge, Lucas and Ferran have to part ways. Ferran reminds him to visit his estate and he will properly repay the life debt he owes him. Again, Lucas replies the same way. If he has time, he surely will pop by. There is a moment of silence between them, and Isabel finds it a beautiful sight. Then, they bid farewell, and Isabel thinks that they look like they are old friends. As Ferran leaves, Lucas says that is how real nobles should be like, and how deep pockets he got. Isabel gets annoyed again by his statement and screams at him that she's sorry for being a poor noble. Isabel comes out of the changing room being happy and flaunts her dress in front of Lucas and asks him how she looks. Lucas, on the other hand, looks pissed and starts yelling at Isabel and tells her to pack her things and go home, and then asks how she is planning on training with such an outrageous outfit in the mountains and telling her to go and change into something light and easy to wear. Isabel looks at him with confusion, and when she realizes that Lucas has scolded her, she gets furious at him and tells him that she obviously knows it, and she was just trying to show off some of her fancy clothes, and screams at him, asking why he is getting mad at her for no reason. On their way to the warp stone, both of them were walking side by side, when Lucas lifts a pouch which he was carrying and admires it, saying that it is a very handy tool as it is imbued with spatial magic to allow you to carry so much stuff with minimal weight. Isabel looks at Lucas weirdly, wondering if it's the first time he has seen a pouch, as it is a pretty common item. While walking, Lucas thinks that he noticed it when he hears about the warp stone, but civilization has advanced considerably. The population has increased a lot since back then. Even so, he would have never predicted this, but considering 4,000 years have passed since then, still he can't say there have been a lot of changes in the world. Something clicks in his mind, and it is that it could be possible that demigod is responsible for stalling the development of human civilization. But the question arises, why? Maybe he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to maintain his power once humans advanced further, but it is not really possible because they look down on humans as if they were mere bugs to them. Suddenly, a voice breaks his thoughts. It was Isabel informing Lucas that they have arrived at the warp stone, and what was he even thinking about while being so focused? Lucas scratches his head with confusion, wondering how they arrived there so early. When they walk in, they see a big ground that is called a magic circle. A man announces that the warp will start soon and advises all the passengers to stay within the magic circle at all times. Lucas looks pretty fascinated, and makes an assumption saying that it's pretty ingenious as they all share the same warp stone. But Isabel finds him pretty dumb, and murmurs to herself that he is starting to make her feel embarrassed. Lucas grins and tells her to be careful because if someone is not used to long-distance warps, they might get warp sick. Isabel gets sick of him and starts screaming at him, saying she already knows it. Her screaming gets interrupted as the warp starts, and with a sudden spell of magic, they arrive in Espana. Lucas looks around and thinks that even after 4,000 years it has not changed a bit, and asks Isabel to get going. Meanwhile, Isabel feels nauseous, and Lucas taunts her, saying that he literally told her that she would get warp sick, but Isabel denies it, saying that she has not eaten anything since morning, and she didn't get warp sick. Lucas regrets making her come with him and should have just left her behind. At a nearby restaurant, Lucas orders a meal, 5 servings of bread, lots of meat, and a pint of beer. After hearing the word beer, Isabel freaks out, asking Lucas if he has gone crazy and he shouldn't drink it, but Lucas doesn't care, and tells her that he hasn't had it for so long, and people should sell it in school too. The man on the counter brings their food and interrupts, saying that it is obvious. It's illegal to serve alcohol to minors, though Lucas tells him that he used to drink all the time when he was 13, but the man finds it nonsense. When the food is served on the table, Lucas, without hesitating, starts stuffing his mouth. The man from the counter immediately recognizes them, saying they look like they are newbies heading toward Mountain Espana, wearing brand new armor and swords on their backs, and it's good for youngsters to be full of ambitions, but they should finish their food and go home, as that mountain is no place for new adventurers. Isabel assures him that they already know it's dangerous, as she has heard that it's a heaven for many monsters. The man's expressions darken, and he tells them that they have no idea, as he used to have a son like their age, and he was an ungrateful brat who constantly spouted nonsense that he'd be the greatest mercenary, and both Lucas and Isabel remind him of his son, but he died while adventuring on that mountain. His son was given a duty to protect a mother and her daughter as they were there for some herbs, but only the daughter managed to escape and inform him about his son's demise. He strongly suggests they avoid that place, as even seasoned mercenaries don't come out of that place unscathed. Lucas seems nonchalant and asks him to tell him more about the monsters, but Isabel looks worried. The man scratches his head and gives them a map and tells them that there is no need for payment, and he'll put it on their tab so they should come back alive to pay for it. After finishing their meals, Lucas compliments their sausages, and all of them say goodbye to each other. The man hopes for them to come back in sound, and both of them continue their journey. Lucas and Isabel are facing quite a lot of monsters at the Mountain Espana, but along with Lucas, Isabel is also finishing off the monsters. After they have defeated quite a bit of monsters, they sigh and says that this was expected from Mount Espana. They are only at the base of this mountain, and such powerful monsters are lurking around. Being a smarty pants, Isabel says that she has started to understand why he brought her here, and it could be that they are training here for a month, which could be a good experience for her. But to her shock, Lucas denied that this is not the reason they are here, but instead it is. Lucas wants to go to Scheiser's dungeon. As Isabel hears that, her jaw drops, and she makes sure if he is talking about the same dungeon that was said to have been created by the great sage. A little backstory, it is said that the one who manages to find the dungeon will gain powers beyond anything in this world. So Isabel thinks that this was just a baseless legend which was passed down without any confirmed proof of its existence. Lucas murmurs that he is sure that it's not a cave or anything, calling the great sage an idiot. Then, Lucas remembers what he said. On the mountain that threatens to pierce the sky, on the summit amongst the beautiful pond, and within a small island, that is where I will wait for you. Then, they reach a peak, which is the mountain known as Drake Mountain. And the pond, it has to be the volcanogenic pond at the summit. Lucas thinks that the guy would have loved that place, and all they need to do is find a small island there. Then, he says to Isabel that it's no exaggeration to call it a legend because that place is really filled with danger, but at the very least anyone would need to reach at least tier 6 in order to have a chance of survival. Isabel gasps as she hears that. Then, Lucas tells her that he only would need 1 month to reach tier 6 and challenge the dungeon. She thinks he's fooling around because in order to reach that level, he would need to study and train for dozens of years. He ignores what she said and still goes on to search for a good place to train at. After that, he turns to her and tells her that she should focus on her efforts to find a safe place as well, where she can start concentrating on her mana. The next morning, Isabel and Lucas start fighting the monsters once again. Isabel looks at him and wonders that she has finally gotten used to fighting these monsters, but she wonders what he is always looking so intently at. Suddenly he murmurs that he found it, and he takes Isabel to a magnificent waterfall, which leads to a cave inside. As they enter the cave, Lucas, through his magic, lights up the whole place and tells her that they will be staying here and training for a month. Then, he tells Isabel that he will be demonstrating the training method used by Kasajin that she wanted to know so badly. The moment she hears that, she lights up with joy and can't believe that he said that. But he also made her aware that he will share the method with her, but the only reason he has never told her before is because of the potential danger she will be facing. Further, he adds that if she mimics the method incorrectly, it might cost her her life, so she needs to watch and learn carefully. Now, he follows with his next step. He begins to absorb mana from the whole of the mountain of Hispania. Isabel's eyes feel blessed because he's really gathering all the man into the core of his body like it is nothing. A while later, he opens his eyes, knowing that mana all must do it for him. But he feels pretty surprised when he sees that Isabel has started to do the same. And all he can think about is that Isabel is a child who has passion for seeking knowledge and has a talent for this. Isabel is done absorbing the manure. She opens her eyes to see Lucas smiling at her and she gets freaked out. He begins teasing her and says that it was pretty impressive of her and then tells her that they should get something to eat. Through a summoning circle, Lucas summons some things to eat and gives it to Isabel. She denies it and says that she doesn't feel hungry yet, so they can save it for later. Taking a bite out of it, he tells her that her brain is currently misinterpreting the sensation of mana replication as satiety, so she should eat even if she doesn't feel hungry yet. Isabel does what he says and begins to chomp down the food. While they're eating, Isabel says that she never imagined that she would be spending time like this with him, and she has always observed him and his extraordinary willpower all this time. Further, she says she doesn't understand why her eyes were drawn to him. Could it be that it was his aura or fighting the spirit? But now when she sees him, it feels like he is a completely different person from what he used to be. It is like he already knows what to do and where to go and where to achieve it, and there is no hesitation in his actions. When she is done speaking, Lucas asks her which one seems like the real him, and she replies that both of them are the real him. Then, he says that humans don't change, they simply just grow stronger. After that, Isabel tells him how grateful she is that he brought her here with him, even though he was hesitant at first, and now it's just the two of them there. Suddenly, she realized what being alone with him could actually mean, and she gets hella nervous. Her mind can't stop her from the thought that they will spend the nights together too. Knowing what could be going on in her mind, he interrupts her thoughts and tells her that he isn't into kids, so she's pretty much safe from him. Even though these words should have made her feel a bit relieved, Isabel still feels furious. On the other hand, he goes to the entrance of the cave and she wonders what he is doing. Lucas tells her that he's forming a barrier so they can stay safe from monsters for a couple of hours. As he's done installing the barrier, he lays down to sleep and tells Isabel to get some good amount of sleep too. And as soon as he says that, he dozes off to sleep. Isabel looks at him with a deadly look and for some reason she wants to punch him super hard in the face. The next morning, Isabel wakes up and Lucas asks if she slept well. She rubs her face and asks him how long she has been sleeping for, and he informs her that she slept for 5 hours. Then, tell her to consider this her last break for a while because they will be starting their real training today. Lucas tells Isabel that they will begin Kasajin's training method, the battling one. Before he starts, he reminds her that this is an extremely dangerous training method, and she just needs to observe and not imitate it yet. Then he begins with the training and it is one great sight. Isabel observes that he is separating the gathered mana in his body into fire and water attributes, and the contradicting elements are repelling against each other, keeping the counter-element in check. Her eyes are wide open, and she thinks it's as if within the bounded field inside his body war is waging between the two elements, fighting for domination. Basically, it is reinforcing both elements so that pure balance can be achieved and neither side will be able to dominate each other, and it is like stabilizing a balance of power that is constantly changing. Isabel finds as a remarkable training method. Even though he told her to not imitate the pattern yet, she tries to do it anyway, and as soon as she starts, she coughs out blood and falls to the ground. She gets up and realizes that the balance was only slightly off yet. She is in immense pain now. Observing him, she thinks that it is a ridiculous tightrope that he is dreading with his life on the line. Yet Lucas is digesting this training method as if he is simply meditating peacefully. Isabel can't help but wonder who this person really is. Isabel showers and cleans herself in the waterfall. A bit later, she checks the stones, which she has been using to keep a track of days and weeks. She realizes that 2 weeks passed since then, and Frey has not moved an inch since 2 weeks ago, and she wonders how long is he planning to continue with this terrifying training method. She walks inside and begins to assemble some stuff. That's when her eyes fall on Lucas, who has been practicing mana. What surprises her is that Lucas has now begun physical manifestation of mana, which is a refutable proof that he is nearing the 6th tier. The thing which is more surprising is that he did it in 2 weeks. Isabel has never witnessed such inconceivable speed of growth. Meanwhile, thanks that he's still being really slow, and he needs to be faster with more efficiency. Isabel once again tries to imitate his mana practicing method. A while later, it started raining really harshly. It was creating a whole lot of sound. 3 weeks have now passed, and the sound of rain distracts Isabel a bit, and when she opens her eyes while she is practicing mana, she begins to cough blood once again. Soon enough, she realizes, while wiping the blood off her cheek, that the slightest lapse in concentration is all it takes for the balance to crumble down. Yeah, it is still hard to believe with her own eyes that the rate of her own growth has been really great so far. She uses her hand to wave mana, while she wonders that this may be the long-forgotten way of Kasajine's battling method. While she looks at her hands, she wonders that it truly is a dangerous method of training, and she realizes that their ancestors practiced magic in such terrifying ways, and it's no wonder why the modern mages are unable to reach the heights of the mages of the past. Then, she begins to sniff her armpits and wonders if she smells. Suddenly, Isabel gets distracted by the sound of the barrier breaking, and she gets scared if there's an intruder. The barrier shatters down and her eyes can't believe what her eyes saw. Lucas stops and tells her that it's a phoenix. Hearing him, Isabel gets even more scared because according to her information, they are considered phantasmal creatures and divine beasts of myths. But Lucas seems pretty calm about the whole situation, which makes Isabel look at the phoenix and all she could think about is, she knew that Mount Hispania was home to all kinds of monsters, but to think they would encounter a divine beast was not on her list. Lucas forwards his hand towards the phoenix and says that it was most likely attracted here by the fire elemental that manifested within the battling method. Gently, he tells the phoenix to come near to him, and Isabel exclaims that it's way too dangerous, and a divine beast is not something mere mortals can hope to tame. The phoenix just stands and stares. Seeing the phoenix do nothing, Lucas gives his hand to it, and tells him that the phoenix should have come to him to get his help before too. Isabel is worried for Frey, but the phoenix gently lets Lucas pet its head, leaving Isabel in a shock. This came as a shock to Isabel, because feathers of a phoenix are no different than flames, but Frey touched it with his bare hands. Lucas makes her aware that the phoenix isn't showing any hostility towards him, hence he can pet it. Then, he tells Isabel to take a look at the phoenix without thinking it's a divine beast. The phoenix has suffered a deep wound created by claws. Lucas knows that if the claws were any deeper, it would have gouged out the heart, and it's a miracle that it is still alive. Completely shook, Isabel stands with her jaw on the floor and asks if the phoenix can actually die, because for the longest time she used to think they were immortal because they are phoenix. He answers her that they are simply less restrained by death compared to other creatures, but that doesn't mean they are completely immortal. Just as Isabel hears that, she wonders what is lurking within these mountains because a being capable of inflicting such a wound on a divine being like the phoenix must have been way greater than the phoenix. The phoenixes are phantasmal creatures, a divine beast of myths. Lucas pets the phoenix and tells it that it's all right and he can help it. Isabel stands there in shock, seeing a phoenix behaving like a docile chick. Lucas puts his hand on its head and tries healing him with his magic, and jokingly says to it that he is taking away all the fruits of his magic thus far, and tells it to stay still as it is going to be over soon. Isabel looks at the scene and wonders that even Lucas can make such an expression, as Lucas is a very arrogant man who always is focused towards himself and is self-centered basically. And not just that. Not only his speech, but he feels like a completely different person. All of a sudden it starts raining. Lucas asks the phoenix if it is going to blame it on the rain for not doing so great. He was motivating the phoenix to not lose hope, and that is why he was mocking it purposely. Then, it starts moving its feathers. Lucas tells him to race to the peak of the mountain, and whoever becomes the loser will starve for lunch, but he suddenly remembers that it cannot speak human speech. He tells it to flap its wings harder if it doesn't want to starve, and that it reminds him of his distant past and an old friend. Isabel looks in awe when she notices that the phoenix restores its healing powers by recovering energy from within. Lucas pets it for the last time and thanks him for reminding him about his old memory and advises it to choose its opponent wisely the next time. Then, the phoenix flies away, its golden feathers glistening in the air as he gets his freedom and becomes healed. When they get back to their place, they see something shimmering on the ground. It is a feather of that phoenix lying on the ground. It leaves the feather on purpose as a thanking gift. Lucas explains to Isabel that it's a very rare material that can be used to heal injuries or when crafting magical artifacts, and it will cost a small fortune. He further says that it seems like a friend who knows how to repay their debts, unlike a certain someone who is not able to settle her debts despite being provided shelter and food for weeks. He is taunting Isabel indirectly. Isabel looks at him with questioning expressions when she realizes he was taunting her. She frowns and asks him why he can't talk with humans nicely and treat animals so kindly. It's been 4 weeks now. Isabel looks at Lucas while drinking water. He looks tired and exhausted. He has been meditating nonstop and it worries her a lot. Isabel murmurs to herself that it wouldn't be a surprise if he collapses from exhaustion. As for the past week, he hasn't eaten and only focused on his training. She thinks that she is worried about him. But at that particular time, he looks like a holy man who has reached enlightenment, even though half of the time he acts like a disrespectful man who boasts of his powers. There are times he shows cold-hearted resolve and a sharp demeanor, and yet he could be so compassionate and gentle, like the time he was treating the phoenix. Not only does he have vast historical knowledge and experience, but his speech reflects all those things, almost as if beneath his skin lies an ancient sage, a depth of experience and knowledge of a flawless archmage of ancient times. She doesn't understand why, but sometimes when she observes him, she is reminded of the great archmage, Lucas Troman. She is thinking all of it when she sees a spell of magic surrounding Lucas, which he was practicing for so long. She gets happy and shocked at the same time and congratulates Lucas for becoming a Tier 6 mage, as he did it in only a month, which was impossible for any person. She is impressed and feels unreal at the same time. Lucas looks at his hand, and when he realizes he has finally gotten what he has been trying to get, he gets a sigh of relief. Lucas is observing, while Isabel looks at him and is not believing anything, as it was hard to believe what she was witnessing with her eyes. She tells him proudly that the youngest mage to reach Tier 6 was 35 years of age, and if the world learned that a mere student at the Magic Academy reached Tier 6, there would be an uproar. Lucas takes a heavy sigh of relief when he thinks about the fact that he can finally gather mana just by breathing. Instantly, Lucas feels dizzy as his intake of food and water was very, very less and is about to fall on the ground, but Isabel helps him and does not let him fall. She asks him if she can get him some jerky to help him regain his strength. Lucas laughs nervously, saying his body is a wreck after starving for a week, and grings, telling her to go hunting as he is craving some fatty food. They go out hunting, and Isabel asks him if he will be okay as she was worried about his condition, but he scoffs, and he tells her proudly that he is not that weak, and he will definitely go hunting as he is strong enough for that. While walking further, Isabel and Lucas gasp as there are many monsters that are killed. Their bodies are scattered on the ground. Isabel is frightened, but Lucas got it instantly that it was the phoenix who did it, the same phoenix who was hurt, and Lucas helped him to recover. Lucas was even wondering why he didn't sense any monster's presence while he was meditating. Isabel gets happy, saying that it seems it is protecting them. Lucas gets the flashback of the time when he tells it about taking all the fruits of his training. It took it to heart and tried helping them. Lucas then tells Isabel that it won't be needed for them to go hunting after all, and they should head back to the dungeon after eating those. As they are about to eat after starving for a long time, they hear a scream, a human scream. It sounds like it is not far from there. Lucas says that even though he was hungry, his words cut, and all of a sudden he flew away with his magic powers. Isabel calls his name to stop him, but he goes away too fast, and she is left there alone. A man was tied around the tree. He was crying and trembling in pain, and was screaming for help, as there were a bunch of men who were throwing knives at the man who was tied. A man mocks and laughs at his members, saying that they suck at throwing knives, and they call themselves the vanguard of the Skull Splitter Bandits. The other man, Victor, asks him to shut up and tells him that he is hungover. The vice captain, Lawrence, asks them to leave the man and wonders when a woman would pass by that area and how long they are going to camp out there on that mountain, as it was already a month. One of the men screams and says to all the people to look at him as he is going to throw a knife in between his eyes. When he shot the knife snapped back at the ground. All the men start making fun of him, saying that even the wind said fuck you to him, and ask everyone to pack up their stuff and get going before the chief gets pissed. When they turn around to head back, they see a man standing behind them. It is Lucas, who is looking exhausted and dehydrated. They all look at his condition and wonder if he is already dead. Lucas observes the whole situation, saying playing dart games using prisoners of conscience looks like a game one can expect from shitty bad guys. The man, Victor, in front of him looks at him with confusion, thinking that the corpse is actually talking and was about to attack Lucas, but before he attacks Lucas, he severs Victor's head, separated from his body. Everyone looks at him with utter disbelief, with their eyes widened and jaws dropped. The chief asks him if it was a Tier 5 spell. Light Scythe. Lucas introduces himself, saying that today he is going to teach all of them a great lesson that will make them regret all their lives for doing such deeds. Isabel follows Lucas through the forest, and when she comes to the place Lucas was present, her jaw drops, and she tenses as she sees blood and killed men scattered all over the places. The air smells like blood. Isabel is scared, but she walks towards Lucas, who is surrounded by the dead bodies unfazed, and asks him if he killed all those men. Lucas says no as he lets one of them escape and taps him with tracking magic. He shows her the vice captain's face, who is almost dead, and tells her that all those men called him vice captain, meaning they must have another leader. Isabel looks at Lucas with curiosity and asks him if he is thinking of complete annihilation. Lucas doesn't respond as he zones out and talks within himself that he cannot pretend to feign ignorance when those guys are killing innocent people for no reason, and questions Demigod in his mind if he really enjoys human hating and killing each other. Does it please him to witness their degeneracy? He promises to himself that if the demigod really enjoys it, then he will gladly ruin his entertainment because it makes him sick to his stomach when he thinks those things will bring joy to that ugly mug of his. His thoughts are interrupted when the man tied to the tree coughs and asks Lucas if he saved him. Lucas, without being hesitant, says, "Who knows?" As the guy had already lost too much blood, and Lucas is not obliged to take him with them either. The man starts crying and begging for his life, saying that he doesn't want to die like this. Lucas and Isabel exchange glances, not knowing what to do. Meanwhile, the man who escaped runs as fast as he could for his life and goes straight to his leader and tells him the whole scenario. The leader shockingly asks to correct himself if he has heard it right that the third platoon was annihilated by a phantom. He asks all the men if they are drunk because he is not believing anything they are saying. The man who escaped assures the leader that he is telling the truth. He tells him that he saw it with his own eyes. The man who killed all of them had long, messy white hair that scattered across the winds. His skinny body carried a putrid stench of rot. That guy was a monster as he completely dominated them. Fighting in the mountains, they did not have a chance against him. He killed everyone with a blink of an eye, and their heads rolled over before anyone could do anything, and all he could do was run for his life. All along, he was talking about none other than Lucas. The leader is listening to all of it quietly and attentively and says that he is against a mage. The man standing behind the leader, apparently his bodyguard, agrees with his leader and says that judging from the circumstances, he'd say they are against an enemy who is capable of double casting. The leader announces that it is a battle mage and orders everyone to get ready, strengthen their watch stops as they are to inform everyone once they find their phantom, and once everyone is in position, kill him on sight. The leader's bodyguard asks him hesitantly if it could be a battle mage hired by House Aquareed to deal with them. The leader snorts and says that a high and mighty family of knights would never resort to hiring a battle mage as a bodyguard, and gets furious and points out at the guy who escaped Lucas, saying that he and his imbeciles were playing the dart game. The guy gets scared and starts apologizing to him. The leader then calmly asks him who the guy they were using as a dummy was, and he replies while being scared that it was just some random fodder merc. Leader mumbles to himself, saying that dumb village guy who was escorting a mother and her daughter to gather herbs, he is the same guy who is the son of the bartender in whose restaurant Isabel and Lucas had lunch in, and who told Isabel and Lucas the story of his son who died, and warned them not to go into the mountains. The leader says that he doubts he'd be capable of hiring a battle mage, so who are they actually up against? Another battle was unfolding. Somewhere there was an ongoing fight between Lady Sonia and some men. The leader looks at the fight and smirks. He says to her that she has no idea how long he has been searching for her. Sonia doesn't notice him as her entire focus was on the fight. Lady Sonia, the eldest daughter of the renowned Aquareed, is fighting without any fear and is knocking out everyone who is coming in her way with her sharp steel sword. The leader looks impressed by her skills and says to her that despite everything, she still has an iron grip on her sword, and it looks like the rumors of the great flame swordsman of Ruanable weren't some tales. Everyone related to Sonia looks at her worriedly, and the leader gives an evil smile while looking at her when she finally notices the leader. The maids and the soldiers are worried about Lady Sonia while the leader looks at her with a disgusting look on his face. He says to Sonia, with lustful lies that spending a month in these mountains actually paid off because she is quite a treat, as the rumors claimed. Further, he says that she was born into a prestigious house of knights as the eldest daughter, gifted at swordplay, and she is said to be the genius knight that received the title of Rainstorm from the king. While he blabber that Lady Sonia thinks that her knights have been annihilated, and the only ones remaining on their side are the two maids and Luther. She realizes that Sir Luther retired a long time ago, so the only one who is capable of fighting right now is her. But what concerns her is that they have a little more than 20 men on their side, and all of them are pretty skilled, and she is stuck in the worst possible situation she could have ever imagined. Interrupting her thoughts, the leader asks her that he is quite curious about the battle mage whom she hired, and where is he now? As she hears that, Lady Sonia mutters, "How does he even dare utter such bullshit? And does he honestly believe that a proud lineage of powerful knights would resort to hiring a useless mage as an escort?" That leaves the leader thinking that the guy who beat up his boys isn't the one involved with the aqua reeds, but it is a phantom, and he is really curious to know who that was. At this point, Lady Sonia is pretty confused, and she wonders what he is talking about, to which he says that she doesn't need to worry because they won't kill her right away while he slurps his tongue. With an evil smirk, he says that she is smart enough to know what's coming in for her in this situation. Lady Sonia takes a step back, seeing the lustful eyes of the men, while the only thing that is on their mind is to bang a real noble woman, which they never thought they would be doing. A rare occasion. Angrily, Lady Sonia grinds her teeth and yells at them to shut up because she would rather cut her tongue off than become their plaything. But they look at them with a lustful look in their eyes and say that if she croaks, then they will just have their fun with the women behind them, talking about the maids. The leader says that they have been taking out on this crappy mountain just for this opportunity to capture her life, and he is pretty sure that she has noticed that his boys have gotten really thirsty by now. He makes her aware that those women will wish that they were dead when his boys are having their fun with them. Hearing that makes Lady Sonia even more infuriated, and she thinks that this is the reason why they spared those girls. The maids are shivering and holding each other out of fear, and they say to Lady Sonia that they can't let themselves drag her down under any circumstances. Sir Luther also says that he will gladly die if it meant defending her honor. Knowing that there is no hope for them, Lady Sonia apologizes to Sir Luther and the maids for dragging them down into the mess due to her incompetence as their master. With tears in their eyes, the maids say that they grew up on the good grace of the respectable Aquareed house. Then, begin to beg Lady Sonia to grant them painless death with her blade. They cry and further say that it would be dishonorable to reunite with their lady in heaven if they become playthings to those animals. Lady Sonia cleanses her sword while she hears the maids beg to be killed. On the other hand, the leader thinks that those are just some crazy women to be talking like that. Then, Lady Sonia screams, "To uphold the honor of these two young maidens and to uphold honor for the house Aquareed, I, Sonia Aquareed, gladly pledge myself to escort you on your new journey to the afterlife." With a sword swinging in her hands, she slashes the blade, and the leader screams to stop her from slashing the throats of the maidens. Sonia has tears in her eyes. But, when she opens her eyes, she is surprised to see that the maidens were still alive and unharmed. Suddenly, she looked at her hands and her sword was taken away. Lady Sonia angrily looks at the leader and his maggots and wonders that she had no idea that they were this skilled. She clenches her fist and wonders that she would have never thought that she would suffer the worst possible humiliation as a knight. On the other hand, the maidens cry while Sonia apologizes to them for being unable to grant them an honorable death. But Sonia has another thing in her mind, and she commands them as an elder daughter of the Aquareed house to bite their own tongues and end their lives. Suddenly, the leader says that someone finally decided to show their face, and Sonia wonders who he is talking to. She looks besides her and gets surprised by Lucas's presence, who has her sword in his hand. Lucas arrives at the spot as the girls beg Sonia to kill them so that they'll have the honorable death, and is about to kill them. She shuts her eyes and cries as she is about to kill them, but Lucas stops her by catching Sonia's sword in his hand. Everyone is shocked as Lucas reveals himself and mumbles among themselves that he is the Phantom. The king smirks, seeing Lucas. He says while snorting that he finally showed his face. Everyone is in shock. Isabel helps the injured guy to stand and gives him her shoulder as he was in pain. The king looks at Lucas with his evilness and taunts him, saying that the rumors were actually true and he was taking care of the leader's men. Lucas seems bothered, and instead of responding to the king, he turns to Sonia and asks her if she is the head honcho while handing her back her sword. The leader gets angry while seeing him so unbothered and notices that he came from the direction of where their base camp is and demands to know what Lucas did to his men. Lucas grins and mocks him by saying that he took good care of his men the way he wanted. Hearing that, the leader's face turns crimson in anger, and he orders his men to kill him and not even give him a chance to cast his spell. His men start blabbering that the reports say that guy should be a battle mage, and a battle mage is nothing special. And as he continues speaking, Lucas casts his spell, and with the flick of his hand, a big blow happens, and all the men sprawl backwards to the ground. Sweat beads on the leader's head, and he wonders what is with the firepower and trembles in anger and fear. The men are groaning and trying to get back to their positions. Everyone's jaw drops and they all look at Lucas's abilities while being stunned. Sonia looks surprised and confused and asks Isabel, who is standing with Mr. Luther, who those guys are and what their objective is. Isabel gives her an assuring warm smile and advises her that she should rest as they are not their enemies. The leader starts clanging his sword and starts attacking it in the air, trying to intimidate Lucas. He says that he knows enough when it comes to fighting a battle mage, as at the end of the day, all mages are the same and that Lucad won't be able to keep up with those torrents of attacks since there has to be a cooldown period between spells. He thinks within himself that looking at his spells, the ones he is casting in succession, he must be Lucas's only target, and he admits that he has some impressive abilities, but he doesn't seem too bright, and he'll definitely fall from exhaustion at the rate he is going. Otherwise, Lucas is bound to be stabbed by one of his men while his full attention is on him, and he smirks, thinking that either way, Lucas is going to die soon. A loud roar interrupts his thoughts as Lucas casts another spell. The spell erupted and created a massive explosion, and all the rest of the men were knocked out. The leader is scared now, and his confidence is not the same anymore as Lucas is firing off the spells and knocking out all the men at the same time, and shocked as it is impossible, according to him, for casting spells so long. Lucas continues his spells and flicks his finger, and with another blow, the leader is on the ground trembling in pain and begging for mercy. Lucas stands there and looks at everyone, some of them unconscious, some coughing or breathing hard for oxygen, and some shivering in pain. When the leader noticed that he stopped firing, he assumes that Lucas is out of mana and it's their chance to kill him, and orders them to kill him, or he will kill every one of them. All the men start taking their positions. In the meanwhile, Sonia worriedly asks him if he used up all his mana, and she will lend him her aid. Lucas gives her side-eye and with his hand signals her to step back, saying that it's dangerous, so step back while casting a spell full of fire. Lucas raises his hand while summoning the spell. Flames are created around him. The intensity of the spell was so powerful that the ground started shaking. The leader's and all his men's eyes widen and jaws drop as they see the whole scenario. The men and the leader panic as they wonder it is an earthquake. Instantly, the ground starts cracking and splits in two pieces. All the men and leader screams their lungs out for help and mercy as the ground swallows them, but all of them disappear. Sonia couldn't believe whatever she was witnessing with her eyes and mumbles that it is impossible. Lucas grins and stands there proudly while saying that they have been annihilated. Sonia observes the ground while leaning down. As she touches the ground, she says that the earthquake is a tier 5 spell and questions when he had time to make preparations to cast the spell while facing those mercenaries. Isabel explains while helping the injured guy to walk that the previous spells she has seen him cast in succession only were to buy time to cast an earthquake. Sonia screams in disbelief and repeats what Isabel said, and Isabel again that raging storm of light arrows was only a diversion, as she has never heard of a mage using double casting that way. Isabel smiles and tells her, by looking at Lucas, that she has also never seen or heard it done either until she met him. Later on, Sonia comes up to Lucas and Isabel and thanks them, as she was grateful to him, as she says that presents her sincere gratitude for his timely aid, and introduces herself by saying that she is Sonia Aquareed of the Ruanable Kingdom. Lucas acts all cool and introduces himself back as Free Blake and wonders, where did he hear the word Aquareed? Sonia finds it offensive and asks him if he has any courtesy. Lucas tells her that she is not being courteous either. Isabel interrupts in between and apologizes on behalf of Lucas, and introduces herself and tells Sonia that he is not that behaved and experienced in terms of manners. Lucas questions her, saying what's wrong with his manner. Isabel advises him to be half as kind as he was with the Phoenix before. Sonia pinches her nose and Lucas was stinking as he did not take a bath for days. Mr. Luther jokes that Lucas is not a beggar, but he is something like a barbaric hermit training in the mountains. Then, Luther says that he is the son of the Blake family. Sonia questions him if he knows them. Luther chuckles warmly, saying that Blake is one of the high nobles that oversees the Cascow Empire. He further tells her that the current head of the Blake family is Sir Isaka Blake, and he is one of the Empire's 8 mages who have reached Tier 7, and he is also the 6th magic tower. Sonia listens to him carefully but confusingly asks how a noble man of such lineage can appear so haggard. Later, Lucas asks them where they are headed now. Luther informs him that first they should head to a settlement nearby, and he has heard that there was a city called Esponia near that area. Lucas grins, saying that it looks like they all are headed in the same direction, so they will gladly accompany them. Before they could head ahead, Luther looked behind where his soldiers were lying on the ground dead, and told them that it would take time regrettably, and they should head down first. Lucas asks him if he is planning on burying all the soldiers. Luther tells him sadly that he cannot help it as they can't carry them all to the nearby city. Lucas asks him not to worry, as he will assist him with that endeavor, and casts the magic spell with raising his hands, and all of a sudden the carriage on the ground is in its position, and all the dead men are being put into the carriage, and he smirks while asking them all to get going. All of them are stunned as they see he is capable of doing things no one is. While walking, Sonia and Lucas are talking when Lucas tells her that he is 20 years old. She gets shocked as she thought he must be 30 or 40. Lucas tells her that 20 or 30 doesn't matter to him, as what matters is that it is good to be young, and he curiously asks Sonia about those mercenaries from before, and questions her, saying that it looked like they were camping in that particular area knowing she'd pass by, and so is she having any idea about who they were? Sonia remembers instantly as he mentions it that they did mention something about waiting for them to pass by for almost every day. Mr. Luther interrupted that if it was a month ago, then that is around the time when they departed Ruanoble, but he cannot fathom who might have plotted against them like that, and admits to Sonia that she has many allies as enemies. Sonia mumbles to herself that they were highly skilled for a band of common mercenaries. She gets flashbacks of the incident that happened some hours ago, and says that judging from their ability to hire such skilled mercenaries, their enemies were people with significant power and influence. After chattering, they arrive at a port where one of Sonia's girls departs by ship. Luther expresses his gratitude again, and says that the fallen knights will return to their family's side finally. Both Isabel and Lucas turn to walk off, but Sonia stops them, saying that they owe them one and should repay. Lucas tells them that it is not a big deal, but Mr. Luther also starts convincing him. Lucas scratches his head for a minute and exchanges glances with Isabel and says without hesitating that he could call it even if they buy him dinner, as he knows a really good place that sells delicious sausages. As they enter the restaurant, Sonia covers her mouth with a handkerchief because of the dust and strong smells and mumbles to Mr. Luther that it does not seem like an establishment a noble typically visits. Lucas, after hearing her, tells her to be for real, as it is a pretty well-known fact that rundown establishments like that actually make the best meals in town. Mr. Luther looked at him strangely while he was talking. Just then, the bartender comes up with a tray of food with him, the same bartender Isabel and Lucas met before, and interrupts, saying jokingly, "How did they even call it a rundown establishment? And he looks like a beggar on the side of the road, but at least he seems to have made it back in one piece, and it is nice to see him again." Lucas approaches the bartender and tells him that it is not only them who came back. There is someone who made it back down the mountain with them. Isabel comes inside the restaurant with his son. When he looks at his son, he throws the tray onto the ground and rushes towards his son. He does not believe that his son is back. After an emotional reunion, the father bandages his son's hands. However, Lucas explains to him that they have given him first aid, but he needs to have plenty of rest for a few days. But his son will be all right and praises him that he did well in protecting the mother and her daughter, but was kept as a hostage. Both the father and son apologize to each other. The father apologizes for underestimating his son, and the son apologizes for rushing out without caring to inform his father about anything. Isabel asks Lucas how he managed to know he was his son. Lucas tells her that they are the carbon copy of each other, but what really surprises him is how a certain talentless mage seemed to have a surprising talent in healing magic. Isabel turns red in anger and asks him who he is talking about, but she already knew the taunt was for her. Lucas smirks, saying that who else is there? It is obviously for her. Ignoring her expressions, he tells the bartender that he was hoping to book lodgings for tonight, but it looks like the house is full. Mr. Luther says that it seems he was mistaken, as that place has many customers, so it must be a great pub, as Lucas said, and it is unfortunate, but they will just have to look for another place. Lucas apologizes to Mr. Luther for bringing them there, and says that it is a pity considering the sausages they serve here are to die for. When the bartender hears it, he gets furious at all the men sitting there and yells at them and tells them to leave the restaurant as they are closed for that day. All the men sitting hesitantly ask him how it is closed this early, but he smacks some of them and tells them to leave, saying they won't even have to pay, and it is his place, so it is on him when to close or open the restaurant. He closes the door and turns the close banner on and chuckles nervously, saying it looks like he needs to whip out his great skills and put them to good use for a change, and he'll get things prepared so they should take their time to wash up. At dinner, Mr. Luther looks impressed by the dinner, which was served while Lucas, without hesitating, stuffed his mouth with food, making Isabel embarrassed. Sonia walks down the stairs and joins them for dinner. Lucas tells her that she took her. That is why they started without her. Sonia looks at Lucas and blushes. Lucas asks her what is wrong with her face as her face is flushed red. She huffs, and as she tries sitting on the chair, she says that she is just surprised that he actually looks decent after cleaning up. But instead of sitting on the chair, she gets tripped by her slippers. Lucas saves her from tripping as he sees scars on her hand and asks her what these were, but she tries to hide them. Lucas tells her to stop hiding those as they are the sign of her great effort. Isabel interrupts in between them and starts talking about their final destination, to which she replies that they were on their way to the June States. The memories of Ferran June snaps Lucas's and Isabel's minds as he told them about her fiancé, that she is the daughter of the Aquareed house, the very same that birthed countless skilled knights, but he was not sure if they would get along. Both Isabel and Lucas exclaimed that she is the Master Ferran June's fiancé. Mr. Luther asks them instantly if they are the acquaintances of Master Ferran June. Isabel explains to him that both Lucas and he are friends in the academy, and they heard of the marriage arrangement from Lord Ferran himself while Lucas is eating quickly. Then he asks Sonia to confirm if she is actually his fiancée, muttering to himself that Ferran is a lucky bastard. Isabel, before Lucas and her leave, wishes Sonia a safe journey in the days coming ahead for her. Then, Lady Sonia turns to Lucas and tells him that once he is done with everything, he should come and visit the June State. Lucas thinks about it a bit, and then he says that if he has time to spare, then he will surely look forward to it. Later on, Isabel says to Lucas that it must be nice to have the admiration of a lady from high nobility like Lady Sonia. Lucas thinks that she is talking about Ferran and not him, and he says that Ferran must have dried up all of his luck to get this. But Isabel points out that she was talking about Ferran, and she was referring to him. Lucas turns back to look at her and asks with what the look on her face is. She yells that how can someone be so dense despite being such a playboy when it concerns older women? Man of culture. After a bit, they reach their destination, where Lucas is very sure the dungeon of Shizer is. Simply the place looks so scary that Isabel seems like she has seen a ghost. There were quite a lot of monsters, and the mountain is worthy of being called the Drake Mountain. The monsters at the top of the food chain are called drakes, and they have been screeching wildly. Isabel seems scared and wonders if he is saying that they will have to fight against those things and make their way through there. Lucas points at something and says that it would have been nice if that was all they had to deal with. He was pointing at the ground, and Isabel loses her crap after seeing the paw imprint of a monster which was 70 times their size. That makes them aware that the king of the drakes is several times bigger than them. Isabel falls to the ground and shakingly says that she has never heard of a drake growing to such size before. Lucas thinks that she is being overdramatic and tells her to get her shit together because now they are at the summit of the mountains of Hispania. One thing that he knows is that it is a dangerous place where anything can happen, and it is hell up there. Suddenly, through his magic, he pushes off Isabel, and she falls back against a monster, and Lucas dashes towards them. Meanwhile, Isabel tries to hold herself together from the fall. She screams that, why did he just do that? Then Isabel sees an ogre and realizes why Frey pushed her off. The ogre has red skin and 3 eyes, and Isabel realizes that it is a mutant. Even in such a tense situation, Lucas laughs and says that it looks like the master of the bar key wasn't pulling his legs about the myths of mutants appearing at the summit. Hearing Lucas's voice, the ogre turns towards him and roars while he pulls out a tree from the ground in order to throw it on Isabel. Quick enough, Isabel throws her fire magic at the ogre, and the attack was quite powerful, which even leaves Lucas in a shock. He wonders that she has grown much more powerful than he had anticipated. But the ogre still isn't dead and manages to pull himself out of the attack. That pisses off Isabel, and she begins to scream that her magic doesn't do anything against that thing because it didn't even put a dent on him. Meanwhile, Lucas keeps thinking that it seems like she isn't aware of her growth at all. Further, he says that it is probably mutated and evolved to gain a resistant skin that is able to withstand fire elemental spells, and it was probably due to the drakes. Isabel seems pretty shocked when she hears about the elemental evolution and wonders, what are they supposed to do against things like him? Lucas says that it is pretty obvious that if fire doesn't work against him, then they should try ice. Isabel shivers as Lucas casts the ice spell. Just by creating those 2 ice spears, the surrounding air becomes cold. It's as if the season has changed. As Lucas flicks his hand, the ice spear is shot straight to the monster. Isabel says in a very low voice that he really reminds her of someone, and she keeps seeing images of the great Archmage Lucas Troman overlapping with him. Lucas does not seem to hear as he is busy casting the spell. They both gasp, seeing the monster's reaction as it is standing there more angrily than before, and the spell did not do anything to him. To think his skin is so tough that an ice spear of that magnitude could not pierce through. The monster breaks the tree from its root in anger and roars. The intensity of breaking the tree was so much that both Isabel and Lucas sprawled back on the ground. Lucas lies on the ground unfazed, which makes Isabel more concerned, and she asks him how he is so relaxed about all of it while making a fire spell and shooting it straight to his face. The monster roars as it could not see anything for a minor second, and Lucas and Isabel take their chance of hiding behind a tree. Lucas grins and admires the monster, saying that he has to hand it to him. Not only has he evolved his elemental attribute to withstand magic of both elements, but he has also super reinforced his bone and skin to their limit, and they are particularly as tough as steel. Isabel rolls her eyes as she is not liking the fact that he is admiring a monster while the monster is actually trying to kill them. Isabel worries and tells Lucas that with that kind of monstrous strength, it'd be best to destroy him completely with fire. Lucas smirks, saying, "But his skin has a high fire resistance." Isabel suggests to him sharply why they don't bury him alive with an earthquake like Lucas did before. Lucas chuckles nervously, asking her how she can be so barbaric, and he says sarcastically that this kind of spell would draw the drakes over to this area, and they should take care of it as discreetly as possible. The monster is making a disaster by destroying all the trees to find them. By seeing his monstrous behavior, Isabel says to Lucas that they are past the point of being discreet with that thing causing a ruckus already. Lucas gets fed up with all the talking and advises Isabel to watch and learn. For problems like this, it is best to rinse and repeat a tried method. Isabel looks at him with a confused expression. He walks out before Isabel could protest, and calls the monster so that his focus would be on him, and starts casting the ice spell again. Isabel shivers and tells him to stop relying on ice spears again when he knows it's not going to work on that. Lucas grins and says that there is a saying, "You should swing an axe several times over if you want to chop down a tree." Isabel looks done with Lucas's attitude and unfazed behavior, but as he casts the magic, the monster starts roaring, and as he flicks his finger, one of the ice spears goes straight to his head. Isabel says that it has no effect, as she said, even though the monster's anger is doubled now, and they have to use a different spell. Lucas asks Isabel to pipe down as he is trying to aim. He shot 7 ice spears straight to his head, and on the 7th shot, the monster kneeled down onto his knees and went straight to the ground. Lucas tells Isabel proudly that the monster's game is over. Isabel looks at Lucas, being stunned and shocked at the same time. Lucas turned, smiled broadly at her, and told her that it is just needed to take extra swings if someone wants to chop a tree. Isabel rolls her eyes as she listens to his unending lectures. All of a sudden they hear screeches, and when they look back to see what it is some monstrous kind of bird, and they look dangerous. Sweat coats on Isabel's head as she is scared and is freaking out by the presence of the weird creature. But Lucas smirks and does not seem to care, and could not stop himself with his humor, and says they won't certainly run out of thrills on this journey. Lucas and Isabel put up a really hard fight against those monstrous creatures. The monster's eyes were burning with fire as they were ready to eat their prey, but both Isabel and Lucas cast ice and fire spells against them, and after so many struggles and spells, as Lucas stabbed the last ice spear, their goldenish eyes became empty, and they fell on the ground. As they take a sigh of relief, they hear a huge thud echo behind them. It was a gigantic dinosaur bigger than anything they have encountered till then. Isabel is about to scream, but before she screams, Lucas quickly grabs her, pulls her behind a nearest tree, and covers her mouth with his hand, and asks her to be quiet and not scream, or else they are dead. He tells her that it is a Drake King, and that it is not a foe he can beat at his current level, so they should just hide and avoid it at all costs at that time. The gigantic monster was moving around, looking and sniffing everywhere to find his prey. Both Isabel and Lucas stay hidden and quiet, and as the monster goes away from there, Isabel screams in fear. The footprints of the monster were so big and heavy that they destroyed the ground and made cracks in it. Lucas and Isabel are sitting at the top of the mountain. While Lucas is meditating, Isabel treats his injuries with her magical spells and takes a sigh of relief once they are done. A fly comes and sits at Lucas's finger. He looks at the fly and says thanks for facing all those monsters for the past 2 weeks. He was talking to Frey in his mind. Lucas further says that he has been able to fully sync his mind with Frey's body, and that's more than enough to say it was worth venturing to that mountain, but he still has much more to do while he is there. Lucas asks Isabel to head forward and shows her the place that was a mountain, and the top of it has some light that was glowing on the top. Lucas points it out, saying that that is where Scheizer's dungeon is located. As they fly with their magic power, Lucas advises her to stay alert, as knowing that crafty man, it won't surprise him if he kept a monster in that lake. A question pops into Isabel's mind. How does he know the Scheizer dungeon was up there? She asks Lucas. Lucas tells her that he had a bad habit of playing word games back in the day. Atop the mountain so tall that it could pierce through the skies, there is a beautiful lake, and in the middle of that lake is a small island. He used to tell him how nice it would be to spend his retirement at such a beautiful place. She gets confused and asks her curiously, "Who is he?" But he ignores her question. He has been avoiding her questions for a long time now, and rather than replying to her, he points out that they have arrived at the place. When they land on the ground, Isabel's eyes widen by looking at the beauty. She admires the island and its beauty. He looks at the island, and nostalgia hits him as he mumbles to himself what a crafty person Scheizer was. Isabel looks at him strangely, as she is trying to understand what is going on. He tells her that beneath the island, there is a dungeon many times bigger than the island itself. Isabel does not believe him, but he continues explaining to her that it means this island is nothing but the entrance to the dungeon. Isabel mumbles to herself that it is humble on the outside, but it's far beyond extravagant, just like Lucas. She tries to talk to him again, but he ignores her. As they walk forward, a giant tree comes in their way. As they stand in front of it, Isabel asks Lucas just how big that tree is, to which Lucas says that at least it is quite obvious to anyone that it is the entrance. When they enter inside, there are stairs. Lucas chuckles, saying how considerate of him to create all these stairs for the dungeon, and along both sides are many lamps that are working with the help of fire. As they walk down, Isabel tries to ask Lucas what she has been thinking for a long time. Thousands of thoughts are running through her mind. She knows Lucas is hiding something very big and dangerous, as she even doubts of him the world-famous Archmage, but she tries to shut her mouth, doubting whatever she has been thinking, while Lucas walks down, not noticing Isabel's uneasiness. As they walk down the long, unending stairs, they see a giant bluish gate that was glowing and shining, and light was coming out of it. It looked so ancient and unique that Isabel looked at it with shock. When Lucas touches it, it makes electronic sounds. Isabel asks him how they are going to open it. Lucas tells her that it is Scheizer's handiwork, and if they try to open it by force, it will obliterate them. At the side of the gate is a table-like surface, and it has a blue round box placed on it which looks magnificent. Lucas taps on it 3 to 4 times, and a light strikes out of that box, and so much smoke comes out of it. But surprisingly, the smoke makes an image. A childlike structure appears. It seems like a robot, as it says, testing 1, 2, 3. Can they hear him? Isabel looks quite confused and mumbles to herself that a very strange boy manifested before us, and who he is. She calls Lucas, but he is zoned out. His thoughts are interrupted when the boy excitedly welcomes them to his dungeon and makes an assumption, saying that he is sure they are some magicians and they are trying to find some rare items. Lucas tries to touch but fails as his hand passes through the image as if there is nothing. It was actually just an image or hologram created through mana. Lucas talks to the hologram, saying just how many years it did revert back in age before recording this message, and calls it a senile old bastard and tells it that it is still nice to it again regardless of its current form. Lucas calls him Scheiser Strau. When Isabel hears it, she freezes and confirms if he really called it that. The boy asks them what brought them there. Isabel says that it looks like they can converse with him to some degree. But when Lucas calls his name, the boy responds, saying that he cannot really respond or hear them, and this is just a recording. So he will just say his piece, and further assures that no matter what they sought out to obtain, they will find it there, and the reason is because it is Scheiser Strau's dungeon. Lucas asks him how he died. The boy says that he won't just be granted entry. If he wants to enter further in the dungeon, he'll have to answer the question he asks Lucas, and warn him that getting any of his questions wrong could mean he won't be able to get out of his dungeon. Lucas looks down, his lips trembling. A sudden realization hits him. His friend's voice, his mannerism, everything was just how he remembered him back then. It is almost as if he has gone back in time to the days they used to talk and laugh together, yet Lucas's voice cannot reach him. He gets emotional thinking that he is alone in this world completely. But he fisted his hands and tried to control his thoughts, saying that he is not the only one who survived all this time. Those whom he cherished and loved may have returned to dust with the passage of time, but the tyrants who reduced the world to its current state still remain ruling the world. His sworn enemies, they too remain in this world. Isabel looks at him, knowing he is going through something he is keeping to himself, but both of their thoughts are interrupted by the boy's voice, who starts asking questions, and his first question is, what is it that Scheiser Strau loathes the most in this world? Lucas looked at him, and his reply was only one word, and it was demigod. The boy excitedly tells him that he gave the correct answer. The gigantic bluish gate opens, and without even thinking for a bit, Lucas walks in. Isabel calls him and asks him to wait and goes behind him and tries asking him that if he is, but stutters, and her question remains incomplete as Lucas interrupts and asks her not to just stand there as it is a Scheiser dungeon. And knowing his personality, this is definitely not just a convenient storage room or something, and there is no telling what kind of traps lie there for them, and tells her that if she keeps standing there like a dumbfounded, she will be dead in a heartbeat, and if she truly wants to become stronger as a mage, then she should stop thinking and focus. She gets motivated as she wants to be stronger and more powerful like the Archmage she admires. Lucas tells her to let's do it, to see if the beginning or the end awaits them in that dungeon. Lucas and Isabel enter another room, finding the same bluish box placed on a metal surface. When he touched it, a young man appeared, this time unlike the last time, as the last time it was a small boy. The image is of Scheiser, but it is an older version of him. Lucas tells Isabel that it is also Scheiser, and it looks like he has set it so that every time they pass through the gates, he gains a few years in his appearance. Lucas mumbles to himself that he has no idea why Scheiser did that. The man asks them to be ready for the second question. Lucas looks at the image with a questionable expression. So the image apologizes to him for the lack of explanation, and explains to him that he has prepared greater treasures the more they advance into the dungeon. But they can only take one item from the dungeon, and if they try to cheat and take more than one, his cute golems behind them will do what they do best, which is kill them or trap them in the dungeon forever. And they will be walking out of there the moment they get a single question wrong. The image continues talking about a woman, Iris Peacefounder, that what an annoying lass she is, and he could never understand what goes inside that witch's head. While they are struggling to save the world, she is head over heels for a man, and cares little whether the world burns to ashes tomorrow. Lucas and Isabel exchange glances as they do not understand what he is talking about. Isabel's mind clicks and realizes that the image is talking about the legendary Black Witch. Then, Lucas remembers about her and mumbles inside him that she was a jet black-haired woman who had a mysterious smile on her face. She fits the title of Black Witch down to the last letter, and there would be no man in this world who could resist her charms, and he always thinks that there would not be any other girl more attractive than Iris. He blushes while thinking about her, but tells himself that he should forget about Iris, and it is the man who he finds detestable at times. The image continues talking and says casually that that legendary bombshell was trying to make advances at him all the damn time, but that dumb Lucas didn't notice her at all. He clearly didn't have a talent for reading women's feelings. Lucas is stunned and blushes as he doesn't believe that the image is talking about him. The image says that considering how crazy Lucas is for women, he sure is clueless about them. It makes him wonder if a guy that dense could really be as great a mage as everyone thinks he is. He jokingly says that the golem behind him wouldn't be as dense as Lucas was. Lucas gets annoyed and angry at the same time, and Isabel mumbles that Lucas must be someone like Free. The image changes the topic and asks the next question, and says that Iris is known to have a contract with 3 powerful demons at her command, and among the 3, one of them is known to have 6 arms and held weapons in each. Before completing his question, Lucas answers his question and gives the name of the demon. Isabel's eyes widen, and she is impressed as Lucas didn't even hear the whole question and answered immediately. The next door opens, and as the door opens, they see precious and magnificent diamond jewelry all around the room, and the image is aged again. Lucas understands that he is aging room by room because that dungeon is Scheiser's personal diary. Lucas stands face to face with the image and thinks about what Scheiser was trying to portray, and to whom, and what message was he even trying to give. Question by question, they went to different rooms, and they are now in the 5th room. Lucas thinks that it is pretty odd, as the questions they have gotten so far have nothing to do with magecraft, and they were all just random. He wonders what Scheiser was thinking, but his wondering is interrupted when Isabel appreciates him for managing to answer properly. When they entered the room, Scheiser's image was of an aged old man with a white beard leaning on a stick. Lucas gets emotional as he sees that image of Scheiser. The image asks Lucas Troman, the mage who is said to have reached the pinnacle of magecraft at the mercy age of 40, the grand Archmage of humanity, his life's greatest pride and joy to have known him as his dearest friend. Lucas's eyes fill with tears, and he mumbles that he is also grateful too. Isabel looks at Lucas unbelievably, but both of their thoughts are cut off when the image asks him the final question, and he asks Lucas to call him by his true name. Lucas gets it that it is no wonder why he was asking those random and strange questions. Those questions were not random at all. They were the questions only Lucas could answer. Lucas answers slowly that it was Scheiser Wilseman. Isabel, surprised, questions whether it was Strau, but before she could understand what is happening, the image smiles, and his image starts fading while he says, "He has prepared everything in this room Lucas needs, and the rest of it is in Lucas's hands, his old friend." Lucas screams and calls out for the image to not disappear, and Isabel looks at the scenario in utter disbelief and tries to comprehend what just unfolded. As they enter the last room, they look around. Isabel observes that, unlike the other rooms, that room looks pretty cozy and well lived in. Her thoughts are shifted as Lucas exclaims that he has found it. He found it from a box lying on the ground. He has a small glass jar with him. Curiously, Isabel asks him what it is, and he tells her it is the frozen river. Isabel doesn't believe it and repeats what Lucas just said, as she heard that the frozen river is a legendary solution formed into a single droplet every 1,000 years, which can be found inside the Wailing Caverns. A single drop is said to explosively expand one's magical channels and drastically increase their mana, and there are even rumors that an ordinary person can reach Tier 4 simply by drinking a single droplet of that stuff. Lucas gets impressed by her knowledge, but Isabel doesn't care about him being impressed because she focuses on that solution, as she doesn't believe that it is really a frozen riven solution. Lucas grins while looking at the bottle and says that he absolutely needed it if he was to reach Tier 7 in a short period of time. Isabel looks inside the box and asks Lucas if he came to this place only for this, while looking at a pair of something that looked like unfashionable earrings, and wonders what those are. Lucas scratches his head and mumbles to himself that Shizer is a bastard as he just had to store those of all things in this room and sighs, telling Isabel that those are typhoon earrings and he crafted those. Isabel doesn't get it, and asks how it is even possible that something he had crafted be found in the final room with Shizer's dungeon. Lucas looks down and tells her that those earrings were made 4,000 years ago, and he made them as he had nothing better to do back then, but Shizer really liked them, so he just gave them to him. And who would have thought that he would store them safely all that time? Isabel looks at him suspiciously and asks him to elaborate on what he just said. Lucas looks at her and tells her that it is true. He is Lucas Troman. Isabel's jaw drops and her eyes widen as she is hearing what Lucas is telling her. He explains to her that 4,000 years ago, he and his friend Shizer waged a war against the demigod named Lord, and the demigod imprisoned him into the unknown abyss for 4,000 years. Until one day, he heard a voice piercing through that endless darkness. And it was the voice of Fry Blake. Even to this day, he doesn't know how he called him out, nor why their minds synchronized. But he called him out, and he answered Free's call, and that body, he points out at his body and tells her that it was given to him by Free. Isabel sighs and casually mumbles that now she gets it and understands what happened. Lucas scratches his head and looks at her confusingly as he thinks she might not believe him. Isabel assures him that of course it is truly an absurd story, but so many unexplainable things happened during the time she was with him, and because of all things, she believes him. She kneels down to call him Lord Lucas and, in honor, greets him, saying that he really is Lucas Troman, and he should allow her to present her heartfelt greetings once more, while giving him the typhoon earrings she had in her hands. Lucas kneels down to her and tells her that she should call him Free like she always did, and he is sure it will help in the long run if he wants to succeed in his goal and get closer to her, and he whispers in her ear that she should just act normal, like nothing has changed, because she is seriously giving him goosebumps. After some time, Lucas is sitting on the bed, looking at those earrings, while Isabel is still going around his stuff. Lucas remembers that Isabel calls his earrings an unfashionable design, but before he could ask her anything, she squeals in excitement as she finds a trinket and calls it fashionable, and asks Lucas if it was also crafted by him. Lucas tells her that those were made by Shizer, and explains to her that it was a staff of the great sage, and he used it like it was an extension of his body. Isabel asks him innocently, that isn't it just a bracelet? He snatches it from her and tells her that if she wears it, it's going to suck her mana dry until the deprivation kills her. Lucas wears the bracelet and the typhoon earrings. Isabel admires the way Lucas looks but doesn't show it and shifts the topic, saying that it is an amazing increase of mana. Lucas tells her that it is not his style to rely so heavily on magic tools, but it's a friend's keepsake. Isabel finds a golem core and hands it to Lucas. He tells Isabel that he senses a great signal of mana from within, so he thinks it is a rare artifact and tells her to pack up for now, as the only thing left was Shizer's desk and a book placed on it. A candle on the side which was injected with his mana that burns for eternity. Lucas tells her that Shizer always had strange fascinations when it came to flashy creations. Isabel smiles and assures him that she can sense Shizer's longing to greet an old friend, stemming from the candle as though he was still alive. Lucas opens the book as he is listening to her, and he is in utter shock as he reads the first page, and the written words were, Lucas disappeared. As Lucas flips the pages of the diary, more things were written in the book. Like Shizer thought that it was certainly the work of the Lord. There could be no other explanation. That thing was the only one that has the power to erase Lucas without a trace. Lucas reads all of it, and sweat beads on his head. Shizer further wrote that what he should really do was this wasn't a simple issue of a single Tier 9 mage vanishing without a trace. He was the strong connection that united all of them. His disappearance meant the last hope of humanity vanished with him. Lucas feels emotional as he realizes that Shizer's diary recorded the events that followed after his disappearance, like the growing rift between the Godfist Kasajin and Lucid, the Emperor of Blades. Iris suddenly went missing too. Demigod's influence seems to be extended throughout the continent. Shizer, who remained, seemed incapable of trusting fellow humans. Despite showing their admiration and respect towards him, in actuality, it was likely an act so he'd drop his guard enough for them to take aim at his life. His diary was filled with entries of his horrific encounters and battles he fought alone. Lucas read through the diary of his old friend as he helplessly fought a losing battle throughout the remainder of his life all alone. As Lucas read, his eyes filled with tears. He wrote that Lucas was their leader. He was someone who could not be replaced by another. Shizer wrote that he tried to bear the burden Lucas left behind. But as time passed by, he was faced with the realization that he was found lacking in comparison, and it would wash over him along with the emptiness Lucas had left behind. He wrote that he is sorry that he failed Lucas. Isabel tries to control her but can't, and tears fall from Lucas's and Isabel's eyes as he reads the pages. Lucas is overwhelmed and relates how Shizer felt alone. A true feeling of loneliness. He finally knows what it feels like now that he is really alone in that world. So now he will inherit it along with his will, and will land a good punch across the demigod's face. And he should watch Lucas over. Lucas walks out of the room when Isabel stops him and informs him that there is another page remaining in his diary. The last page was to the one reading that he beseeched him to complete Anastia, and he has left all the clues in there, his great masterpiece, Anastia. Isabel curiously asks Lucas what Anastia is while Lucas searches in a box, and it was basically the golem's core. As they walk out of the rooms and go up by the stairs to leave, Lucas wonders that Shizer was a man who reached the pinnacle of puppeteering. And if such a guy is calling this Anastasia his life's masterpiece, then what is Anastasia actually? Isabel smiles and assures him that if it is him, she is sure he could complete the golem using the core. Lucas pauses and doesn't respond to Isabel as he is in the memories of his past life when he was with Shizer and was making fun of Shizer for creating a weird-looking piece of junk and called him a golem. And Shizer got furious and tried telling him that he just didn't see the beauty of the cubist avant-garde design of his own creation. Lucas finds it hilarious and laughs while holding his stomach as he tells him to stop making golems and ask Lucas instead to make them for him. He was laughing so hard that he was crying, and then he hit him with his fireball spell. Lucas trembles as he remembers all of it, but Isabel interrupts his memories by calling him out loudly. Lucas takes out the golem core from his pocket and says that he assumes they will get to the bottom of the unrecorded history once they complete the homework of Shizer. Isabel questions him about the unrecorded history, as she did not know about it. Lucas tells her that it is the history that happened all while he was locked away in the twisting abyss. Suddenly Lucas pauses again. Lucas fists his hands and tells her that as soon as they are out there, head straight to the village. His expressions are very serious. Isabel senses some kind of danger as she notices the tension in Lucas's voice. As they come out of there, Isabel's eyes widen. She freezes in fear as in front of them a huge, gigantic monster, and the other monsters were waiting for Lucas and Isabel. Lucas seems unfazed as he asks the Drake King if he was waiting for him, but Isabel panics in fear. Lucas stands there confidently, though his hands are shivering slightly. The dragon's golden and reddish eyes are stuck on Isabel and Lucas, and asks the dragon to tell him if it was waiting for him, and provokes him to speak up, and tells it that he knows it has got enough intelligence to talk back, despite being a lizard. The dragon's goldenish eyes turn reddish, and it mocks him, saying that what an amusing human he is, and it is right that it was waiting for him because how dare he trespass on the great Torkunda's territory. Lucas questions him why he is sure it already took notice of Isabel and Lucas when they were in the forest. But why did it pretend it wasn't aware back then? He speaks while his voice is shivering slightly. Isabel gets in shock after seeing Lucas's voice shivering as it was the first time she had seen him that nervous. The dragon smirks, letting out a mocking growl, and confesses that it has been lying in wait to see him emerge from that place, as all the fools who emerge from the dungeon seem to carry rare artifacts. Lucas knows that he has the frozen river with him, so maybe the dragon knows about it or something. Lucas taunts it, saying that he knows now how it has grown to that stupid size because it has been using that dungeon as bait and to hunt explorers and mages all the time. Lucas fists his hand. Anger rushes through his body as he is already overwhelmed by the memories of his old dear friend. He says that the dungeon that my dear friend cherished has been using it for its personal gains, and it deserves to get some lessons. The dragon flinches at the past memory when a girl tries to kill it and warns him if she ever encounters it again, it will be dead. The dragon roars, sweat coats on Lucas's forehead, and he screams to Isabel to run away. Isabel hesitates, but Lucas scolds her and tells her that he is not sure if he will be able to beat it, so she should get out of there. Isabel looks at him worriedly and says that's more reason for her to stay. The dragon takes out fire from its mouth while saying that those fools will make fine morsels, and it's time for it to feast. It throws the fireball from its mouth towards Lucas and Isabel, but Lucas casts his spell and gets the Shizer staff. It was a metallic rod that was shining, and with all his strength, he threw it against the fireball to protect them, intercepted the attack, and shielded himself. Lucas sweats in fear and turns around to scream at Isabel that she can't see. It is dangerous, and at that time she was a liability to him, so she should get away from there. Isabel tries to speak, but shuts her mouth because of the whole situation. Lucas assures her that he will be back. She looks at him in worry and disappears from the whole situation immediately. The dragon blows fire at Lucas, so Lucas tries to protect himself by flying, but the other flying monsters start following him to kill him. Their screeches fill the air as they surround Lucas from all sides so that he won't get any chance to escape. When Lucas notices them and casts the ice spear with the windstorm spell, he kills the small monsters, and some of them get scared and fly away, but the dragon starts flying towards Lucas. Lucas knows that he can spend all his day killing those small fries, but he will have to kill that bastard, or else that will not end the way he wants. Lucas kneels down, and he thinks within himself that he only has 3 seconds to cast the explosion. Lucas is scared as the dragon is coming towards him. He observes it very carefully, as he will need to calculate its trajectory and velocity to get the timing right, and in 1, 2, and 3 seconds, the explosion towards it and the explosion happens, flames of fire around, causing disruption everywhere. A massive blast erupts. The massive blast of the fire erupts around the dragon, but it doesn't seem to affect the dragon, though the dragon praises him evilly, saying that it is not bad for a human as he managed to calculate the timing perfectly to cast a spell to match where it would be by the time it completed. The dragon smirks and questions Lucas, saying, "Now what?" He had the right idea and pulled it off just fine, but his firepower was lacking, and the massive explosion didn't even tickle it. Lucas sweats in fear knowing that the dragon is too big and nothing would really work on him. He thinks that before him is the Drake King Torkunda, and behind him are its little minions, and this is the worst possible situation to be in. He thinks hard, thinking there must be another way when he remembers he has the frozen river he obtained from Shizer, and maybe he should risk drinking it there. Lucas gets the flashback of him and Isabel walking out of the dungeon when Isabel asked him if he would drink the frozen river, and Lucas cuts her off arrogantly by saying that it is not some energy drink, and that to balance and absorb the frozen river's energy, even he would need at least a week to pull it off. And they didn't have water or rations there, so they could not expect to stay there for a week. Lucas removes the thoughts of drinking the solution, and tries to make himself understand that drinking it would be suicide, and nothing more at that time, and starts using Shizer staff in the air to hit the dragon. As the dragon opened his mouth to blow fire towards Lucas, he missed his shot and is now helpless, as he has no chance to protect or shield himself. All of a sudden, he sees something unbelievable. The Phoenix. The same Phoenix who Lucas saved, and the same Phoenix who killed the monsters in the forest to protect Isabel and him. The Phoenix comes from behind and holds the little minions of the dragon by his mouth and toes and kills all of them by his strength. Lucas gets happy as he sees the Phoenix and tells him that it is more than recovered now. The Phoenix gives Lucas an assuring look and turns to fly in front of the dragon. The dragon is annoyed and asks the Phoenix to get away from its way. Lucas gets scared for the Phoenix and tells it to run away as this was not the opponent it can hope to defeat. The Phoenix let out flames from his mouth against the dragon. Lucas shivers at the sight and screams at the Phoenix to go away, as the dragon has high resistance against its flames, and it is his worst nemesis. The Phoenix looks at him and goes to him. Lucas understands everything the Phoenix says with its eyes, and he understands that the Phoenix already knew, and yet it was saving him. The Phoenix says with his eyes that it will help buy time to help him escape. He asks the Phoenix if it is asking for him to run away, Lucas Troman, the most powerful Archmage, to run away from danger. His arrogance and overconfidence is fading away, and Lucas is thinking all of it while the Phoenix is having a tough fight with the dragon. Lucas thinks that at that time he was pitiful and weak, and the current him is pathetic according to him. He doubts that maybe it is because that is not his original body, or maybe his senses are dulled because magic has degraded over the past 4 millennia. He thinks that he lacked both resolve and determination. He says sorry to Phoenix in his heart, and thinks that it looks like he has learned something from the Phoenix this time. And while the Phoenix is tackling the dragon, Lucas flies away from there and gets inside a hollow, and thinks of being grateful to the Phoenix for putting in some sense in him, and he will never forget this resolve again. He takes out the bottle of the solution and thinks that death is nothing but an everyday occurrence, and he gulps the solution slowly, just hoping that the Phoenix would be him sometime. As he drinks the solution, the shade of his face changes. He can feel the changes inside him. All of a sudden, he falls on the ground and kneels down as he looks at his hand. Something snaps inside him, and his eyes shine, and he screams. The burden is very overwhelming for Lucas. The injuries, the exhaustion, he couldn't take it anymore, and he just screams in pain and fear. Fear of letting down everyone who was proud of him. As Lucas gulps it down, and the entire surrounding environment can feel him overpowering as well. Lucas cannot hold the tremendous power within himself in the weak body of Fry Blake. Meanwhile, the Phoenix is trying its best to buy him more time. The King of the Drakes mocks the Phoenix and says that he thought he recognized him, because he is the divine beast that got away from him last time. But today is turning out to be a great day for the King of Drakes. The King of Drakes then says to the Phoenix that his never-ending life force will provide the best nutrients for him, and the Phoenix gazes at him with an angry look. A bit of backstory: an odd creature had entered the domain of the king, and it was the Phoenix. When the king saw that the Phoenix was struggling, he tells the Phoenix to give up and become his nourishment, but that angers Phoenix and tries to hit the King of Drakes. With that attack, the Phoenix runs away and the King of Drake waits patiently. After all, They live on the same mountain, and they will run into each other again. A while later, the Phoenix ends up in the territory where Lucas and Isabel were staying. As soon as Lucas saw the Phoenix being hurt terribly, he realized that he was fighting against a terrible opponent. So Lucas decided to help the Phoenix and heal him because the Phoenix reminded of a distant past of an old friend of his. An old friend of Lucas was a Phoenix just like him. The Phoenix thinks about it, which gives him a boost of adrenaline to fight against the King of Drakes, and it actually ends up hurting him. That move enrages the king, and it stabs the Phoenix. On the other hand, Lucas can't hold the immense power that is flowing within him. His eyes are glowing anything that he did expect as much, but he never thought that would burden him, and he would feel this overwhelming feeling. He says sorry to Shizer because it looks like he wasted this second chance to fight back, and everything is a direct result of his pride and overconfidence, and he has nothing more than apologizing to everyone. He falls to the ground that he no longer lacks the force to digest any more of this power that is overflowing within him. But he still wonders that if it was really his life force that was lacking, or was he lacking some resolve or maybe his life force, he is regaining that slowly bit by bit. Suddenly, he feels something strange around him. It is some warmth that is enveloping him. It was Isabel, and Lucas was not expecting her to be here. She is recovering him and tells him to stay still. Lucas asks her that she mentioned that they would need food and water to completely absorb the powers residing inside the frozen river. So did she go back to the village? For that, he says that earlier, Isabel mentioned that he is alone from now, and he finally knows what it feels like that he is really alone in this world. Finally, Isabel speaks up and says that she still doesn't know what he is trying to accomplish in this world, but she has faith in him, and he is the only one that she truly believes in. Then she tells him that she would like him to believe that he is no longer alone in this world. As Lucas hears that, he thanks her thanks that he figured out what he was missing this entire time. The thing that he was lacking wasn't his resolve or determination this entire time. The thing he was lacking was trust in his companions. The Phoenix and Dragon have been fighting for a long time now. Instantly, the dragon feels terrifying cold energy coming from the cave. When the dragon is wondering about it, the Phoenix gets his chance and pokes his sharp, edgy nose in the dragon's eyes. The dragon's anger doubles as pain explodes in the dragon's vision as the Phoenix attacks. It takes the Phoenix in between its sharp and deadly jaw, gripping it tightly, and asks it how it dares to poke the eye of the great Torkunda, and without a warning, slams the Phoenix into the ground. The intensity of the dragon slamming it is so much that the ground cracks. The Phoenix laughs at him. The dragon leans closer to the Phoenix in confusion and tells it that it is dying already and is daring to laugh at the dragon as it is dead for him. The dragon's curiosity grows about the coldness, and it leaves the Phoenix dying and flies away from there to see the cold coming out of the cave, and it grows more and more as time passes by. The monster wonders what is actually going on there. As it looked down to see, an ice spear came towards it, but it got safe by moving away quickly. The intensity of the cold increases as the dragon and its little minions fly towards the cave. The minions freeze while flying and die, and the dragon thinks within itself that it has existed in the world for 1,000 years. Yet that is the first time it has felt such emotion welling up inside it. Its base instincts are screaming at it to flee, and that must be fear. As it looks, a human-like creature comes out of the path coming out of the cave. He is none other than Lucas, surrounded with the shield of ice. The dragon turns his body to fly away, mumbling to itself that the great Torkunda is afraid of a mere human, and assure itself that no matter what, a human is only a human, and Lucas should just wait till it retreats and recovers its lost eye. The dragon is flying at a very fast speed, but Lucas is in front of him as it looks in front. The dragon, who was always proud of its speed, could not believe that a human could surpass its speed. Lucas looks at him with an unrecognizable expression, with his icy shield glowing, as if he is a demon instead of a human, and casts 5 to 6 strong ice spears against it. The dragon calls Lucas an insufferable mortal and regains its position to attack Lucas, but he disappears from the front as it searches for him around. A voice comes from behind. It's Lucas. He mocks the dragon, saying that it looks like the dragon's arrogance has blinded it to thinking a creature that has existed for 1,000 years would solely rely on its eyes. The Drake King knows Lucas is aiming for the blind spot because he wants it weak. However, Lucas again stabs the ice spears towards its eyes. The dragon roars in pain and frustration and slams the piece of mountain towards Lucas and laughs to mock him, thinking that Lucas must have died now. But as the dust settles and it glances towards the destroyed place, it sees Lucas standing, his posture firm and eyes straight towards the dragon without any fear, having not a single scratch on his body. Its confidence wavers and the dragon's eye widens, and it has doubts about Lucas being a human. Lucas stands there, making the dragon wonder what he really is. As it flies towards Lucas, he casts a gigantic amount of huge ice spear, which was going to the length of the sky. Isabel appears from behind and looks shocked by seeing the sight in front of her. She tells Lucas that it would not be a surprise if he falls unconscious any moment at that time, and dragging that out any longer will be dangerous for him. Lucas seems unfazed and continues casting the spell, making the dragon agree that he has terrifying powers, but the monster provokes Lucas to discourage him, saying that it thinks of settling all of this with a single attack, so he should gladly do it, but nothing would really happen, and taunts saying that it doesn't know what changes he suddenly went through. But not even the phoenix was able to withstand the power of its shout, and a mere human like him stands no chance against its flames with that measly ice magic, and that is the end for mortals like him. But Lucas doesn't seem to listen to any of it and gives zero shits and continues casting his spell. Meanwhile, the dragon also opens its mouth to fire flames. With the flick of Lucas's finger, the ice spear goes towards the dragon and the dragon's flame towards Lucas. Both ice and fire collide with each other. It gives an insane shockwave that even shakes the mountains of Hispania so violently. Isabel looks at the clash while being scared, but thinks that these shockwaves are so enormous, one could even call it beautiful. The continuous flames from the dragon's mouth are pushing back Lucas. Isabel worriedly looks that he is being pushed, as at this rate he will lose, and right now she is unable to help him in this battle. Isabel looks for him, but he disappears, making her wonder where he went. The dragon laughs mockingly, assuming that it looks like he is out of juices and a mere human could not compete in a test of power against the great Torkunda. It continues saying that it is the power of its dragon shout, but his words are cut as his head is sliced off with an enormous ice spear in one swift motion, and his body and head fall on the ground. Isabel is impressed, in disbelief and worried at the same time, as Lucas teleports instantly behind Torkunda and deals a killing blow, and he defeats the Kings of Drake just like that. It sounds simple, but it is not. She wonders if this is just a mere fraction of his full strength. Then just how powerful was Lucas Troman in his prime? Lucas is in the sky and he floats as he becomes unconscious and falls because of all the strength he used. But Isabel catches him before he hits the ground. Isabel looks at him worriedly as his body is freezing and he is shivering with cold, but he doesn't care about himself and asks her to take him to the Phoenix. Isabel carries him as they are flying. She praises him as he manages to defeat the Drake King with ease. Lucas admits that he got lucky because it lacked real combat experience. Isabel says that it existed for thousands of years, so how is that possible? Lucas explains to her that a one-sided slaughter and the art of combat are very different things, and if someone is up against the rivals, they are raw in power, and they need to rely on tricks and strategies. He tells Isabel that he made the dragon believe that he was using his final trump card, but in reality, he utilized 80% of his full power to generate the ice spear, and using the remaining 20%, he moved behind his line of sight and created that scythe. As they talked, they reached the place where the phoenix was lying dead, his feathers torn apart. Isabel cries at the sight of it. Lucas controls his emotions and taps on the phoenix and says it looks like it has saved his life once again. He raises the phoenix in the air with his magic. Isabel asks him curiously what he is up to, so Lucas tells her that he plans to resurrect it. They take it to where the dragon was and lay the phoenix beside it, and with the magic, Lucas casts a spell that makes the flames burning within Torkunda's heart absorbed into the phoenix. Isabel finds it unreal. After some time, Lucas mumbles that it would be enough for a phoenix to revive itself, and informs Isabel that in the absence of Torkunda, he is sure the remaining drakes will start a battle amongst themselves to seek dominance. They will confront each other to decide who among them will reign over these mountains. He looks at the unconscious phoenix and says to it that it will be it who will rule over those lands and become the guardian of those lands, so that his friend's precious dungeon is no longer defiled by a second or third Torkunda, and he believes that the phoenix is more than qualified to rule over that mountain. He whispers to himself that he will leave it to the phoenix and will look forward to the day they will reunite. The next day, Isabel and Lucas arrive at Chaos Symphonia. The town looks lively, and Lucas sits on a bench. Suddenly he gets distracted by Isabel, who says that she has made the reservations for the ships. They already knew that there weren't any ships departing today while she hands him over some juice, and Lucas thanks her for hard work. Well, he drinks the juice. Isabel asks him if he is feeling okay, and he says that he will be fine. He just has to put on some weight. Then Isabel says that the magical artifacts of Lord Sheezer that they recovered from Torkunda's lair seems to be showing great effect, and the salamander cloak is stabilizing the frost energy of the frozen river with its fire properties. Further, she points at the bag and asks if they actually had to take all of the items recovered from that lair, because the spatial storage bag looks almost full. So, Lucas says that some stuff might be useless to them, but he wasn't about to allow his friend's keepsake items to get dust in that rotting stink hole. After a while, Isabel says that the new semester is almost here, and it feels like it has been so long, and it feels like she is going back to school after several years, even though they have only spent a week at the peaks of España. Suggesting to Lucas, she wonders if they could visit Lord Farron because his place is nearby, and since there are no ships departing today, they still have to spend the night here anyway. Lucas agrees to that, and they go to his place. When Lucas and Isabel see the place where Farron lives at, they both sweat out of shock. The guard outside asks them to state their business, and Lucas right away says that he was wondering if he can see Farron. Then, the guard asks him who they are, and Lucas says that they are his friends. Even though the guard meant to ask his name, the guard thinks that he is such a rude, insolent brat. Nicely, Lucas tells them that he is Frey Blake, and the guard remembers what Farron said to him that a friend of his might visit during the holidays, and tells him Frey's name. He guides him that if he makes a visit here, he needs to treat him the way he would treat Farron, with utmost respect and manners. With disbelief in his words, the guard thinks if this is the delinquent Lord Farron was talking about. Suddenly there's a clatter of a carriage and the guard announces that the young lady has returned. Then the garage stops and the gate opens and a lady steps out of it and asks what the matter is. The guard mentions her as Lady Rilia, and tells her that they have visitors claiming to be friends with Farron. Lady Rilia looks at Isabel and Lucas and realizes who they actually are. She smiles and says to Frey that she has heard a lot about him from her brother, and turns to Isabel and recognizes her too. Isabel has no idea who she is, so she asks about her, and Lady Rilia introduces herself as Farron's younger sister while she sits back in her carriage. She invites them to sit inside with her. On the other hand, Isabel is so mesmerized by her beauty as if Rilia has taken her breath away. Meanwhile, the guard tells Rilia that they still have to identify who they are, but Rilia gives them an intimidating look, which makes the guard blush, and they let the carriage go inside. After a while in the carriage, Lucas wonders that they still haven't reached the mansion, and there's no sight of it too. Exactly how big this estate could be. Suddenly Lucas realizes that Rilia has been staring at him for quite some time, and asks her why she has been staring at him. She stutters, and says that he looks a bit different from what her brother described him as. She was told that his hair is ashen gray, but they look closer to white. Holding a strand of his hair, Lucas says that they have grown white due to some incident he faced. Rilia suspects some hesitation in his voice, so she asks him to speak freely because after all he is her brother's friend. Well, Lucas takes it way too literally and begins blabbering, which makes Rilia a bit uncomfortable. Encountering this sight, Isabel screams at Lucas to actually hold some manners and respect while talking to Rilia, to which Lucas says that she literally did ask him to speak freely, and he did that. To end the awkwardness, Rilia asks him that they both, Farron and Lucas, go to West Road Academy, so how is it like dealing with her brother? Lucas says that he doesn't know because Farron is 2 years ahead of him, which makes Lucas his junior. Rilia realizes that Lucas and her are the same age. But Lucas's cold response makes Rilia's expressions way too apparent, and she wonders if Farron really is friends with this crude man. Meanwhile, Isabel and Lucas start to fight again because she tells him that he needs to be more respectful because they are at the June estate. As Lucas, Isabel, and Farron's sister walk inside, they meet Farron, who is smiling as he sees them walking towards him. Farron June welcomes Lucas and Isabel and asks them what took them so long, as he has been waiting for them eagerly. Farron assumes they have finished with their business elsewhere, and notices the change of Lucas's hair color, so Lucas tells him that he wanted some change. Lucas hesitantly says that he is hungry and exhausted, to which Farron agrees that Lucas looks pretty thin and tired. Lady Rilia looks at Farron and thinks that she has never seen him so lively before, and interrupts in between them, saying to Farron that it seems he hasn't been seeing or noticing her that day at all. Farron chuckles and consoles Rilia, saying that he would never ignore his princess, and asks her how the party was, but she gets jealous and says that he didn't even remember it till now and goes inside, murmuring to have a good time with his friend Lucas. Farron calls her to stop, but she doesn't seem to listen at all. Lucas gets awkward and looks at the scenario embarrassingly. Farron wonders what he has done, thinks that he has made a grave mistake now, and admits that sometimes his little one is so mad at him that he doesn't even know what he did to make her upset. Lucas awkwardly says that the way he sees it, he thinks it's more of a mystery that Farron calls his own little sister a princess. They walk around Farron's place and talk about random stuff when Farron suddenly says that in any case, he had no idea Lucas was seriously scaling those treacherous mountains. Lucas curiously stops him as he doesn't remember telling him any of it or wherever he was headed. Farron explains to him that he was informed that Lucas rescued his fiancée, who was ambushed by bandits. Lucas doesn't recall her, but Isabel tells him that he must be talking about Lady Sonia. Lucas then assumes that she must arrive there safely then. Farron takes a deep sigh and tells them she has been relentlessly engaged in her swordsmanship training ever since she arrived. She is an incredible hard worker, so it is no wonder for him. She was titled the Rainstorm Knight at such a young age. Lucas jokingly says that it is true. He thinks she wasted on the likes of him and asks him where he is taking him. So Farhan informs him that it is customary for all the guests to greet the family head first when they arrive. As he opens the door, he says allow him to introduce them to his father. The door opens. It is a huge dining hall. They all sit together as the tea is served to everyone. Farhan's father welcomes them and asks Lucas if the Count Blake is doing all right. Lucas smiles and tells him that he is all right. Lucas mumbles to himself that, despite having Free's body, he has never once met this guy before. Farhan's father, Shepherd June, the head of the June family, not only is one of the 5 Tier 7 mages within the Empire, but he is also the master of the 4th magic tower, and Lucas assumes that maybe he also knows about Demigod. Shepherd starts talking, saying that the 6th magic tower is quite far away from there, so it is quite unfortunate that the only time he can meet his father is during the annual Magic Towers conference, and he misses the brief and enjoyable time he exchanged with him. Lucas nods and looks at him, observing the tattoo under his eyes, the magic tattoo of Shizer. Shepherd shows his gratitude, saying that not only did Lucas save his son, but he also seemed to rescue his fiancée as well, and he should express his heartfelt gratitude for Lucas's great services and ask Lucas what business he had in those dangerous mountains. Lucas tells him that he was there for some personal reasons. Shepherd doesn't understand it, so Lucas tries to change the topic by saying that it is such a trivial matter that it is undeserving of his attention. All of them talk about random things. Meanwhile, Shepherd asks Farhan about the preparations of the banquet. Farhan assures him that last time he checked, his schedule was moving along smoothly. His father reminds him it will be a banquet attended by many important guests, and he wants Farhan to personally supervise it from here on out. Shepherd's attention shifts towards Lucas again, and he tells him that there is a magical spell he has been searching for a while, and he would like to hear his opinion on it if Lucas humors him. Lucas respectfully tells him that he doesn't know if he could offer any significant analysis worth the king's time. The king tells him to not feel pressure, as he just needs a refreshing perspective. Instantly, Farhan stands and tells Lucas that he will meet him at the banquet, and Lucas asks Isabel to accompany Farhan. Now Lucas and the king are sitting alone in the dining hall. Tension grows thicker in the room as the king looks at Lucas with his sharp eyes and tells him he would appreciate it if Lucas tells him why he is really there and what he is plotting. As Lucas hears that, all that could come out of his mouth was, "Huh?" So, the king asks again why a member of the Troman Rings is present in his estate. Lucas says that there has been a misunderstanding, but the king isn't in the mood to listen, and he says that it is very cunning of him to use Farhan to get to meet him at this time of the year. Further, he says that Lucas surely has some guts to be wearing those before him. That makes Lucas wonder what he could be talking about. Suddenly, Lucas realizes that he is talking about his typhoon earrings. He holds them and realizes that the Troman Rings is also that club that Farhan leads at the school. But he still asks what the king means by his words because he's finding a difficulty in understanding. While he makes it clear that he got these earrings when he traveled to the top of Mountain España, the king asks if Lucas is denying that he's a member of the Troman Rings. So, Lucas explains that Farhan did ask him if he wanted to join the Troman Rings, but he told him that he isn't fond of joining such clubs. The king yells that he isn't talking about the club that Farhan leads in the academy, while he realizes that Lucas has nothing to do with them. Feeling embarrassed, the king explains that there has been a huge misunderstanding, and Lucas may let his guard down now. Calmly, Lucas replies that he would do it if he decides to do the same. The king thinks Lucas is quite daring and asks where he thinks he actually is, and Lucas replies that he is at his friend's house. Then, Lucas assures him that he actually is just visiting his friend, and that's it. He explains respectfully he had no slightest intention of meeting him. The king sighs and says that he doesn't trust him fully, but he's going to give him a slight benefit of his doubt and refresh his opinion over him. But, for that, the king demands to know his background, because as long as he wears those earrings, his good conscience won't let him fully believe that he has nothing to do with them. So, he asks Lucas, who does he think is the true master of this continent currently? Further, he says that it is more than likely that the nations humans have formed, the Cast Kali Empire is the greatest. But even though they are regarded as the most powerful empire, they occupy 1/10 of the entire continent. Lucas hears him attentively while he continues that if they were to rank up all the races, the humans would be in the top 3 races. So, that makes it harder to claim that humans are the masters of the continent. The king says that the true master of the continent exists elsewhere, who is a transcendental being that controls the continent from the shadows. As Lucas hears that, he begins to shiver. The next words that come out of the king's mouth are demigod. Lucas can't believe it, and the king says that they are said to be divine species, which transcend humans, and it can be said that they are the true masters of this world, the apex predator that controls everything. Then, the king tells him that he might sound like an old man with his mythical stories, but he can assure that these mythical stories are actually true. Lucas nervously laughs while he shivers, and the king asks him why is he smiling. Lucas thinks that they were only 5 of them before who dared to stand against demigod, the ones who dared to put their lives on the line to oppose demigod. 4,000 years have passed since then, and he already believed that the world was completely taken over by demigod. Lucas is lost in his thoughts, and he wonders that he thought that nobody had an idea about demigod. The thing he was least expecting was anyone to know about demigod in this world. It was unimaginable for him that people like them still exist, and slowly but surely they will be increasing in numbers too. The king sees Lucas lost in his thoughts, and asks what the matter is. Lucas doesn't respond to him, and he thinks that these people have been hiding in all the corners of the world waiting for the right opportunity to strike. The individuals who know the existence of demigods, yet those willing to strike against their influence. The king asks him again why he's been smiling, and Lucas thinks how could he not smile? Because this is the first time in the world that anyone has spoken about demigods. This is a ray of hope for him. Finally, Lucas speaks up that he's aware of demigods, but he has limited knowledge over them. The king asks how he knows that, and Lucas realizes that he has to calm himself down because he could be a potential ally, and he needs to be wary of what he says. So, Lucas calmly says that he read Scheiser's notes when he obtained these earrings. As the king hears that, he jumps up from his seat and wonders if it is true that he read Scheiser's notes. Lucas nods in yes, and the king calms himself down and thinks that he is demanding to give him all the information he possesses first. The king says that the information they have on demigods is scarce and limited, and they don't even know how many of them there are. Nor do they know what their ultimate goal is, nor do they understand why they prefer to act under the shadows, and they haven't unraveled any mystery regarding them yet. The only thing that is certain, the power so great that if they wanted to wipe out the entire world, they could do that. More like a genocide. They have observed that they have tried to do so in the past multiple times. Lucas realizes that the king has good information which could be useful for him, and he is also certain that they are very few as compared to humans. They could be less in numbers, but each of them possesses powers which could be like a natural disaster to destroy this world. Then, the king tells him that 4,000 years ago, there were 5 humans who dared to stand against demigod. The king tells Lucas that he must have heard about the heroes. The great sage Scheiser, Godfist Kasajan, Lucid the Emperor of Blades, Iris the Witch of Darkness, and the Archmage Lucas. But after the Archmage vanished, the entire history changed. A rift formed between the Godfist and the Emperor of Blades. The Witch of Darkness also vanished into the annals of history, and the great sage alone fought to the bitter end against their sworn army. But it was impossible for him to face demigod by himself, and just like that their names have vanished into the forgotten history. Lucas thinks that it is just as indicated by Scheiser's diary, and it seems that he knows about the forgotten history that hasn't been recorded in the current history, and he thinks he can trust his intel. The king says that they are an organization that inherited their will, further explains that he has generalized it as one circle, but they have gone their separate ways, and they stand divided throughout the continent. He says that a long time has passed and the will they have all inherited has split amongst the rift that formed between them, so now they merely keep a check on each other. Lucas sighs when he hears that. He thinks that humans will never change because they always end up dragging in politics. The king tells him that they have divided into countless factions, but the ones with the most influence right now are the Stro Necklace, Armlets of the Peace Founder, and Lucid Sword. Lucas observes that the circles have inherited their names, so he assumes that there must be something that is named against him and Kasajin. The king explains that he doesn't have much intel knowledge about the other smaller circles, but he has heard that the situation of the Troman rings isn't very good. The last he heard is that the Circle Master has perished, and half of their executive members have split and joined other circles. It makes Lucas mad, the politics. But Lucas asks about the one who inherited the will of Kasajin. The king answers that it is assumed he practiced the rule of 2, and the title of Godfist is passed down from master to disciple from generation to generation, but they have no clues as to where the current Godfist is. Lucas wonders if the circle at the academy has any association with the Troman rings. The king responds that the club is something young students at academy created on a whim, and if they find rare talents among those students they try to recruit them to their cost, but for the most part those students aren't aware of their existence. But from their perspective, it is better to have their masquerade with the same name, since that will make it less likely to be detected by their enemies. He gives a glass of wine to Lucas and says that there is no telling where and when the timing of Demigod's eyes might be watching, and he could be hearing this conversation right now as well. Further, the king says that the reason why they have been suspecting him since he appeared before him wearing the typhoon earrings is a relic known to have been possessed by the Archmage, so he thought that Lucas might have been a member of the Troman rings approaching to declare war upon them. Finally, the king stops speaking and says, that is all he can tell for now, and it's his turn to tell him something, and how did he acquire those earrings? And he says further that Lucas mentioned that he has gotten them from the top of the mountain, and he has heard rumors that many of the ancient things of past heroes can be found on the top of the mountain, but only a handful throughout the history have returned from the top alive. After that, he says that not only is it near impossible for them to locate the entrance of the dungeon, but even if they somehow managed to locate the dungeon, they would have been greeted by the king of drakes, the Torkunda. Lucas says that he was simply lucky, and he had no idea where he was at the time, but by sheer luck he came across the great sage Shizer's dungeon. The king is shocked and asks if the notes he mentioned reading were discovered in the dungeon, and Lucas says yes. And the contents of the diary lines up with everything that he has told him. The king begs Lucas to tell him where that dungeon is, but Lucas says that he discovered it by accident, so he is not sure if he can go back there. The king says that he is unable to erase his suspicions about him, so if it is okay with him, won't he show him the power of the typhoon earrings? Lucas keeps the glass down and shows a bit of the power of the typhoon earrings. Then, the king says that he wasn't simply suspicious of him because he thought he was a member of the Troman Rings. There was another reason for that suspicion. Later, at night, during the feast, people are enjoying themselves. Meanwhile, Lucas stands in the corner and thinks that he has finally found individuals who might know about the demigods, but things have gotten quite complicated. He is happy to know that there are circles out there that have inherited their names, but the circles have split and locked in a power struggle amongst themselves. But he needs to learn more about the circles and has to digest the power of the frozen river as well to investigate how to complete Shizer's Anastasia. Lucas's head spins thinking about it, and Isabel spots him and walks to him. Isabel is wearing a dress that was made for her by Lady Relia. She asks how she looks, and Lucas says that she can simply live day to day without any real worries about the future. She gets a bit furious as to what he meant by that, but he seems too deep in his own thoughts. Meanwhile, he thinks about what the king said to him, the real reason for suspicion. A month ago, he heard a disturbing report that there was an individual who may have gotten in contact with the demigod. As Lucas hears that, he asks who that was, and he says it was Lord Isaka Blake, his father.